Pete, we're on the microphone. Okay, hi, everybody. Hey, everybody, if you, hi, time out. If we have a personal conversation, just off topic, you can go outside, okay? Because we just gotta, I really appreciate that. Okay, good evening. This is the June 25th, 2018 meeting of the Development and Governmental Relations Subcommittee to the Holyoke City Council. I'm the chairman. Councilor Valentin, Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Tallman are with me. Councilor Roman is en route, running late. If we could go to number 2, please, that'd be great.
A motion to take up item number 2, take it off the table for discussion.
If we could just make the revise the motion to open up a public hearing.
So moved.
Open up a public hearing?
Yes. Okay,
Motion
is made and seconded to take item number 2 off the table and open up a public hearing. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Special permit application for a home occupation license for John and Erin Kelly at 123 Homestead Ave for a yoga class business. Do we have John and Erin Kelly with us? We do. Oh, wonderful. Well, welcome. So Mr. Tallman is going to show you where you can speak to the mic, and he's going to make sure the microphone's turned on.
It's on?
Is it on? Okay.
Testing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can tilt the microphone so you can speak into it, and so the way this is going to work, and there's a public hearing right behind you as well. So we're in a public hearing. So we're going to hear from you, the applicant. Then we're going to hear from any department heads who have any comments on this application. I'm going to take a quick read of the application itself. And then we'll hear from the public, either pro or con, or if they just have questions, and then we'll proceed from there, okay? So, John and Erin, welcome to City Council. We're happy to have you here, and if you would, why don't you tell us what's happening with your business, or your proposal?
Well, we're proposing that I can run yoga classes in the building that I have behind my house. I have a nice space that my husband built, and I've been using it as an entertainment space for my family because my house is small, and I've also been using it as a place to practice yoga where I invite some friends and we practice together, and I'd like to make it official and get a permit to teach there officially.
Okay, and so Erin, you would be may I call you Erin?
Yeah.
Okay, you'd be the instructor? Mm-hmm. Okay, and John, you're on the application as well, because you're
Sweep the floors.
Sweep the floors. Okay. Okay. All right, and I see your application for yoga classes. Expected customer traffic flow, 5 to 10 cars per class. Hours of operation varies. Deliveries none, signage none, name of the business. I'm going to let you pronounce that for me.
Ahimsa.
Ahimsa Yoga Center. Okay, thank you. We see that you are current with all your municipal charges, etc. Okay, I'm going to have some questions, but do any councilor members have questions right now for the applicants? Councilor Tallman.
Thank you, John and Erin, for coming down. My concern with doing any kind of permits for new businesses is to try to keep it as quiet as, sort of invisible to the neighborhood as possible. That's what we're supposed to do. So you talked about the classes, and how many cars per day or per class? And where would they be parking? That's my concern, because I know Homestead Avenue, and I know the area.
We have a really big parking lot, a driveway, that can hold 10 or, say, 15 cars. And I don't expect that many. I mean, sometimes it's 1 car, sometimes it's 2 cars. But I don't expect that I'd have anybody parking on the street. And my driveway is the first street going into Humiston Slope. So it's not like I'm bringing in, a flood of traffic, a flood of cars, ever. They pull into the street and they go directly into my driveway.
Okay, and how many, what are the days you plan on doing this? How many days a week, and what are the hours? going to be?
In the evening, I work a full-time job, so in the evening, 6 to 7:30 roughly, a couple nights a week, maybe 2, 3, and then maybe one class or two on the weekend. Later in the morning, 10 or so.
So in the weekend, like 1 day or 2 days
Yep.
on that? I'm just thinking Sundays, traffic and people, church or whatever. You would just do it for a portion of the day?
But yeah,
Or like a couple hours, or
class, yes, couple hours tops.
is that your average time for class, 1 or 2 hours?
It's an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half.
Okay. And the other thing is, and I know no signage. Would you have signs or no?
Wouldn't need it. I mean, I'd like to have it, but I wouldn't need it. I
Okay,
mean, I
'cause
think
that's,
that's what it said on the application, right? That there are no signs allowed.
It does say
So
that.
I would
Right,
abide
right.
to, I would abide to that.
okay. That's all I have for now.
Counselor Valentin?
Thank you. Thanks for coming in and for your interest in having a business at home of this nature. When Councilor Tallman talked about, the quietness and the noise, I think with yoga we're all set, so that's pretty good. Have you discussed with, I'm assuming you've discussed with neighbors and abutters, and I mean, is the overall census that folks are in agreement with this, or should we be surprised if anybody who's here in the audience coming in and saying that they're not in agreement with this?
I would be surprised if I had anybody here to oppose.
Okay. So you've discussed with neighbors and abutters and,
Well, they got the notification saying that I have applied, and I've spoken with them before about this, and they are in support.
okay, great. That was my question. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Is that Mike? Okay. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions too. And so what I'm gonna suggest is, so we're applying for a special permit,
Yes.
and what we do quite often is, because we get it. You're on Route 202. It's a busy street, but yet, Hummiston Slope is kind of a thickly settled neighborhood, and so we quite often put conditions on special permits.
Yeah.
One of the conditions, which I'm so grateful for the question we had previously, there's no parking on Homestead Avenue at all.
Right.
But we will add as a condition, no parking on Hummiston Slope, so it'll only be off-street parking. So that's gonna have, and you're gonna have to tell your, I appreciate that. So, second of all, one of the major complaints we hear all the time is people cutting through neighborhoods and people exceeding the speed limit on public ways. Now, we just passed by this body, last city council meeting, a citywide a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. So I hope people kind of hear what I'm saying. That is now the law of the city of Holyoke, is 25 miles per hour. Not all city streets, but virtually all city streets, subject to review by the DPW superintendent. Homestead Avenue would not be 25 miles per hour, I suggest. However,
Yeah.
we always, especially that turn coming around where you are, it's a bit of a blind curve.
Right.
So I really need to implore, we can't really put this as a condition, but I really need to implore upon you to advise your clients, should you be granted the permit, that they have to be cognizant of that tight curve. They've got to be cognizant of the speed limits in the city. And as I think you and I both know, that is heavily policed, particularly by the Mass State Police.
Yep.
So we don't want to have any problems there. And lastly, that street in the wintertime is not the safest street for traveling, especially after an ice storm. It's quite often.
I'd be surprised. They've done a really good job on that hill.
Yes, they have, but I do have two good friends in particular live up the top of that hill, and I've had feedback from them relative to the iciness of that street. The other thing I'm concerned about, your hours of operation. So I don't really want to have it loose, like a couple. What would you say if we made are there certain nights of the week, for example, where you wouldn't want to teach a class? For example, a Monday or a Friday, or is there any night that can you rule out any night right now that you wouldn't want to teach a class?
If you wanted me to rule a night out, I would say Friday night.
No, I don't want you to do anything, but I want to, I just want, I want to limit this to the extent that's reasonable for you, but also reasonable for the abutters. I don't want to limit you at all, but if you feel that, I mean, Friday night is probably not going to be your night, then we could say the permit would be Monday through Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., for example. You could have classes there. Is that reasonable?
Not really.
Well, then tell me what is.
Because what if I wanted to run, late morning classes?
I haven't gotten to Saturdays yet. I've only
But
gotten
what
to.
about midweek, late morning?
Well, you didn't say that, so you tell me.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, so.
let me clarify. If
Please.
I would like to maybe teach late morning classes during the week and as well on Saturday.
Okay, so late mornings being what times?
Maybe 10 to 11:15 or 9:30 to quarter of 10 or quarter of 11, something
All
like
right.
that.
All right, I mean, I'm not going to make any motions now, but I want to get it all on the table, so if we do have any butters here, I want to give them a chance to
I understand.
speak.
Most classes you think you're going to do.
I don't know, John. I don't know. It's hard to know right now.
Okay, and then Saturday, so those are weekday mornings, and Saturday morning would be kind of similar, like
Yeah.
10 to 11:15?
Yep.
Oh, okay, and,
Because earlier, the traffic is heavier, and that's why I was thinking I would have it a little later, when the traffic was not as heavy. Like when the college is, people are going to school, it's heavier around 8, 9 o'clock, and so it's less heavy traffic around 9:30, 10 o'clock.
right, I agree, so from 10, okay, and I thought did you say you worked full-time?
No, I don't work for the
You
town.
don't, okay, all right. Okay, so let me just recap. We have mornings, weekday mornings, so Monday through Saturday, 10 to 11:15 a.m. Weeknights, Monday through Thursday, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Is that
Sounds, yeah.
Okay.
That sounds reasonable.
okay? So I want, and then we said no signage, no on-street parking whatsoever.
Right.
Let's see here, no deliveries. Okay, so I don't really see any of the counselors raising their hands. We are in a public hearing. Does anyone from the public care to speak for or against, or have a question relative to this applicant? Okay, thank you, Ms. Kelly. So what I'd like you to do is step up to the microphone. If you would just state your name and address, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Patty Patricia Murdy's, and I live at 28 Dunn Avenue in Holyoke. And I'm just here to speak in favor of what Erin is trying to do here. I've known Erin for probably 20 years. I met her when she was working for Holyoke Medical Center teaching yoga there, and I've kind of followed her around. She had a studio in South Hadley for a time, and I know her as a extremely responsible business owner, I feel like I have seen her space. It is absolutely beautiful. I think this would be a wonderful thing to be able to offer in Holyoke. I've spoken to many people who are interested in taking yoga with Erin, and I tell them that I really hope that she can have a business again to do this someday. I agree with what Councilor Valentine said, that I don't think we need to worry so much about noise and that kind of thing. And I think that the nature of yoga is that people are extremely respectful, and I think all of the participants that Erin would be teaching would certainly be respectful of that this is a gift to have in this neighborhood and in our neighborhood. And I think it would be a wonderful thing for the city. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Would anyone else care to speak? Please come up, state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Karen Hirschberg. I live at 81 Ashley Road, and I'm walking distance from Erin's house. My husband and I are very much looking forward to being able to walk to our yoga class. So I'm very excited about this, and I just want to say we're in support. He couldn't be here, he just had surgery, but we will both be her students. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Please.
My name is BJ Blida, and I live on 93 Homestead Avenue. My property actually is right next to theirs. We share actually 2 lines. And I'm just here to say that I know Aaron's been running classes with friends for, years, and we've lived in the house for about 11 years, and we've had no problem. No noise, no traffic. I know their driveway, they do have quite a bit of parking there. I have a little parking envy myself, because I live on the tight inside corner of Homestead there, where we have a lot of issues with traffic and whatnot. And I'm just here to say that I have absolutely no problem with them getting a permit to do this.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, please.
Good evening. I'm Jamila Ali Alexander, and I came to support her application.
What's your address, please?
I personally live at 15 O'Connor Avenue. My son lives in the apartment that they have there on their property. So both him and I feel supportive, and I even would say I don't think even time restrictions are very necessary, but whatever you want, because it doesn't really bother anybody, it's just kind of its own little thing. She's got enough parking, so I suggest that, I support it, and with as few restrictions as possible. I don't think it'd be any problem.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this? For or against? Okay, are there any department heads here that want to speak on this matter? I don't see any at this point.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Counselor, I'll recognize you in a second when you raise your hand, but I'm gonna make a comment. Do the Kellys want to add anything else? Are you good to go with?
I think we're good to go.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sorry, just making some calls here. Okay, on this, okay, so if we do close the public hearing, we can't take any more testimony at all. Counselor, you want to be recognized? Make a motion?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, on the motion, close the public hearing, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so public hearing's closed. So I would like to, I think we heard from the applicant that, so I'm going to propose the following conditions on a special permit: that there's no on-street parking, that the hours of operation are Monday through Saturday, Monday through Thursday and Saturdays from 10 to 11:15 a.m. That they would be Monday through Thursday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. That the classes would only occur in the ancillary structure and not in the house proper. So that's my motion.
That also no signs, right? But that's part of it.
And right,
No signage.
there'd be no signs.
Mr. Chairman? Dave?
Is somebody? Oh, yeah, Councilor Bacon, sure.
I would just ask for consideration of the committee just to round the hours to a 2-hour window, just to give some flexibility.
Okay, so you want to say 10 to noon in the morning?
Right, just
I know.
so there'd be flexibility.
Okay, so 10 to noon and then 6 to 8?
Right.
Is that fine, Counselor? Is that fine, Counselor?
Yes,
All right.
thanks.
Okay. Okay, so no on-street parking. And just on the matter of noise, we're all pretty clear on yoga studios. I think what we're speaking of is when the class gets out, that we congregate outside in the parking lot and we have conversations and all that. That's kind of where the noise things go. I don't think there's any question about having loud noise emanating from the studio itself. I just want to be clear on that. Okay, so hours would be Monday through Thursday and Saturday from 10 a.m. until noon, Monday through Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Classes would occur in the ancillary building, not the house proper, no signs. Are there any other amendments?
I'd like to comment on the motion, though.
I don't have a second yet, so I gotta get a second. Okay, under discussion, Councilor Valentin. We're just before you do that, we're joined by Councilor Oman.
So I'm going to speak against the amendment of setting hours. I think that we heard from Aaron that, and from also prospective students, that I don't think there's a need for us to restrict. I would hate to see that then on Sundays, for some reason, Aaron chooses to do a class that's, right after people get out of brunch, and if it doesn't match these hours, then she has to come back here and amend a special permit. I feel that based on the former experience that she has doing this type of business, and the fact that we are hearing the commitment in terms of being aware of the neighborhood and the needs of the street and the students and the classes, I feel that it would be unnecessary to limit hours. So if I vote no, it means that I don't want you to be restricted to hours. It's not that I don't want you to have the special permit. So that's what I wanted to clarify.
Well, let me ask a counselor a question. Does a counselor want to make a motion?
My motion is that the rest of the stipulations are fine, but I would eliminate the piece about specific hours. So that would be my amendment, the rest of the restrictions, but without the...
So the motion is to eliminate the restrictions on hours.
Correct, the rest of the restrictions are fine.
I understand that. Okay, motion fails for lack of a second. So the main motion is on the table right now. Let me just defer the word by Counselor. Counselor? Linda?
Yes?
On the hours as we propose, and I think we heard from the applicant that they were reasonable. Are they reasonable in your estimation, Counselor?
Well,
Or is there something you want to change?
Just to sort of capture the conversation a little, I'm not seeing that the applicant is seeking Sunday hours at all. And it seems like this is working around her work, and she's doing this in conjunction with it. So it seems like a reasonable thing fitting what her plans are. And I think we've tried to put in a little more flexibility. So if she wants to do 9:30 or 10, she's not going to be restricted to one class at one time of a day. So it seems to be meeting the needs that she expressed.
Okay. All right, thank you for that point. Okay.
Excuse me, can I just speak on that for, no? I can't.
You know what, we closed the public hearing. I do apologize, Mrs. Kelly, but that's kind of, that's the risk we run when we close public hearings. So, but I will say this, just for, you and any other applicant have every opportunity, should we pass this, to come in and seek an amendment to your permit. I don't think any of this is unreasonable. And I think it would allow you a lot of flexibility and a chance to grow. Should you want to grow, and should you want to have the permit amended, you just come in, file it, and we would just do this over again. I'm pretty sure there'd be less of a crowd, but this is just one of those nights. So, okay, so that's where we are. Okay, so any other counselors want to say anything? I don't hear anybody. So we have I guess we would need this has been, the restrictions have been made and seconded. And so I guess I would want to get a motion to approve this, to recommend for approval, along with the restrictions as delineated.
Make a motion to recommend approve the special permit with the restrictions listed.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so Councilor Valentin's a no on that, and the motion passes 4-1. So what's going to happen, Mr. and Mrs. Kelly, is that we are going to, now this is where it gets even more confusing, and I'm glad we're saying this now. So what we do is we recommend to the full city council. The full city council actually takes the vote that matters. The next scheduled city council meeting wherein we would take this up is August 7th, because generally the city council suspends its rules, does not meet in July, so we would meet the first Tuesday in August. But it's my understanding, pursuant to a conversation I had with the mayor late this afternoon, that there's a possibility that we would meet in a special meeting, would you excuse me? A special meeting of the city council on Thursday. Now, I don't control, this Thursday. Now, I don't control that agenda. That agenda is made by either the city council president or the mayor. So I will recommend to them that if we do have a special meeting on Thursday, that we do add this to the agenda so that we can, move it forward. Okay. Thank you. Okay, with that, Councilor Mann, welcome. Okay, now we have, if I could get a motion, please.
Motion to take up item number 3, special
And?
permit for home occupation.
And open the public hearing.
Open public hearing.
Motion's made and seconded to take up item number 3 and to open up the public hearing. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, special permit application for a home occupation license for Andrea Alvarez to operate a hair salon at 45 Longwood Avenue. Andrea, come on, is that your dad? Okay, why don't you, because you're the property owner, why don't you? So, welcome to you both. I will say that I did receive an email from an abutter, but I'm not going to read that email yet. Why don't you, why doesn't Councilor Bartley find the application? Okay, so that's helpful. Okay, so let's see. This is for a hair salon, approximately 6 to 12 people per week. Hours of operation, 24 hours a week, 6 hours, 4 days a week. The name is Beautiful You Salon. And I'm looking in the back, fees paid, and all taxes and fees are current. Jorge or George Alvarez, as well as the other homeowner, Raul Bedoya, give my daughter Andrea permission to run a business out of our home located at 45 Longwood Avenue. So, hi, thank you for coming. And it was nice speaking with you on the phone, the few occasions we spoke. And why don't you tell us what's happening?
So I've been at 47 Longwood all my life. I just recently, it hasn't even been a full year since I've been at 45 Longwood. I was working at a salon for 3 years, and I've decided to try to just have my own space. And now that I'm living in the new house, I have the space for it, so I was hoping to receive a permit so that I can do it comfortably without problems.
Okay, I know I'll have a few questions for you. Just happens to be the ward I represent, that's all. But I'll have similar questions to what I had for the other applicant. That's not much different. But I did get an email from an abutter, and I'll read that into the record. But I like to open up to other counselors first. If other counselors, Councilor Valentin.
Councilor Bartley, when you were reading the application, what were the hours again that were stated?
Oh, it says 24 hours a week, 6 hours, 4 days a week.
Okay, it doesn't say the 4 days? Or the hours? I mean, that's not specified?
Correct, not specified.
Okay, so I guess my question for you, Andrea, would be, do you have a set 4 days, and what would the hours be?
So I'm hoping to work Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, evenings. So I don't have a specific, because I'd like to try to be flexible for clients. I would probably try to leave open anywhere between 12 to 8:30, so fill in wherever I can in that time for clients. And then Saturdays would be my 5th if it's needed. Like if I'm busy throughout the week and I need an extra day, or for an event, for weddings and updos and whatnot, then I would try to just do that on a Saturday. But I preferably would rather not work on weekends. But like, I don't want to say no to it either, just in case.
Okay. And the, just as a follow-up question as well, what's the parking situation at 45 Longwood?
So that 45 Longwood is, that house is on the corner, so I have a good amount of space for the parking. We're trying to figure out if we can get a driveway put in. He's in the process of talking to someone to see if it's possible. That way I can put my car, my grandfather can put his, and then we can have even more space, but I'm not trying to have more than 1 to 2 people there at a time, so it wouldn't be more than 2 cars.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions from any counselors? Okay, Council Tomlin?
Yeah, I mean, in this type of business, you probably want, I don't know if you have certain clients, but you probably want people to know that you're there, right? There won't be any signs. You don't want.
No, I don't. I just want it to be
Okay.
appointment only.
So
kind of
quiet,
thing.
yeah, because my thing is that type of, I know that neighborhood very well, and I think the parking, if you only have one person at a time or two, I know that parking probably is a premium in that street, because a lot of people don't have a lot of people do park on the street, correct?
Yes, but I find that, like, I don't think it will be a problem just because their house, my parents live right next to me too, so they have a driveway, so that's where they park their cars. So if anything, we can park somebody in the front of in front of their house, but it's a pretty big corner that we have. We have a good amount of space for cars.
Right, and you stated how many people approximately a day, maybe 3 or 4, or?
A day.
A day.
If I'm lucky, 4 to 5, but not like a jam-packed day. I'm not trying to have people there all day, and I would only be one person per appointment. Yeah.
And what is the average appointment, an hour and a half?
It depends.
Depends on what.
Depends on what it is. Yeah. So I mean, I can have a client there from 3 to 4 hours depending on what we're doing, and yeah. So that's where it would be maybe 3 to 4 people, depending again. Like if I'm leaving that slot open between 12 to 8:30. If I have a full day, maybe I'll have four, maybe 5 people that day.
But more than likely, you just have one person at a time.
Yes.
Not more than, okay.
Yeah.
That's, and on these, I've been doing these type of permits on the other committee and this committee too, that, we try to keep this as invisible as possible to the neighborhood. Because, people, as far as the quiet, I know it's a quiet thing and you go inside, but so you don't have a lot of traffic, and you wouldn't have any type of deliveries, or would you?
No.
Any supplies you'd pick up on your own?
I would do all of that on my own. And it's my home. I don't really want people just coming in, that's why I decided on the appointment only. It would just be people I know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before I go into any of the councilors have questions? No, okay. Andrea, well, so welcome.
Thank you.
I will read this email after I ask a couple questions. So just let me make it clear. So your customer parking is on or off street?
On street.
On street. Okay. So how many chairs will you have in the salon?
I have 2, but I would not. The majority of the time, it's just one that I would have there.
Okay, so it would just, would there be any other employees besides you?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend that we make a restriction for one chair. That's for one chair total. And now, as I said, now I'll make that as a motion in a second. But as I said, let's see how it goes. And then if an applicant wants to come in after you're up for working for a little bit, you can come in to seek an amendment. But when I get to this email and when I get to my questions, I think you understand why. There are some concerns because as Councilor Tallman pointed out, I was familiar with the neighborhood, but I'm very familiar. That is just all residential in that area. So at the corner of Oakwood and Longwood, it's just heavily residential, and the complaints I get there are either speeding or parking issues. So one of the things that as you heard me say to the last applicant, we have a new 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, which is city ordinance now. There may not be signs up, but they will be posted. So you need to implore upon your customers that there is a speed limit, and it's not a cut-through. And frankly, it would be nice if they could just all come off of Northampton Street, but that's probably, you can't, it's kind of tough to enforce that as opposed to cutting down Martin Street. But yet, that's a concern. It's a legitimate one, as well as the aforementioned parking. The hours of operation, I really don't like it to be that loose, because it's just, I want to set a reasonability standard for the neighborhood so they can know when your customers are coming and going. So, tell me, what is, what are, I mean, you said 12 to 8, basically, 5 days, 5 days a week, even 6 days, and that's way in excess of,
no.
okay, you said 12 to 8, so tell me, what would be, fair, so Monday through, I mean, so you'd be working Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesday, Thursday, I mean, hold on a second, so you would close Tuesday, so Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and your hours would be?
Flexible between 12 to 8.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because that, if you add, that's 32 hours of operation plus Saturdays. And your application says 24 hours.
Right.
So I don't think we can, I mean, we can't even support that, because your application says different.
All right. So Saturdays would be just, last minute kind of thing. If people cancel and they need something, it's kind of hard to have something so limited, as far as with clients and whatnot. And even if I say 12 to 8, it's not like I'm going to be working all those hours. It's just open so that, I might schedule that and I might just have a haircut that day, an hour. So it's more of just so that if people do show up at that time or like between then, it's kind of like, it's an okay thing. It's not just, every day I'm going to be busy 12 to 8:30,
No,
that kind of thing.
I hear that, but you've got to think about the feedback I'm getting from the residents, is that first of all, we can't even grant the permit with that in mind, because you said 24 hours, right? 12 to 8, 4 days a week exceeds 24 hours plus Saturday. So I'm trying to come up with a plan for you to.
So what if I do like a 2 to 8? Would that be more reasonable?
Okay, sure it would. So a lot more. So 2 to 8, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
And then Saturday, if I do work, it would probably be anything between 10 and 1.
Okay,
I don't plan on working anything
that still
later.
exceeds the 24 hours that you added as a condition.
And it was a rough,
I know, I realize that, but yet, here we are. So,
Right.
And so I'm going to ask you to sort of hone it down. And even the 24 hours is probably, I'm not sure how welcome that's going to be to the neighbors. But what I'd like to ask you to consider, just consider, is if it's 2 to 8 on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, can you make it, say for example, 4 to 8 on Fridays and still leave the 10 to 1 for flexibility on Saturdays?
Yeah, that would work.
Unless you want to change the Friday.
I mean, I would rather take Saturday away. It's not,
Okay, so let's take.
Because I like to just get it done in the week and try to have the
Okay,
weekends
copy
off.
that. So if we said 2 to 8, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so that comes out to a total of 24 hours. So you've got that. Councilor Romano, I'll recognize you in a second. All right, so there's that. And we said the parking is on street, but it's going to be by appointment only, one customer at a time, one chair at a time, no deliveries. So far, so good? Okay. And I haven't opened up to the public yet, but so I want to get councilors to ask a question. Councilor Rahman.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for opening your business, and thank you for compromising. One, that's great. And two, this doesn't stop you from going on-site to do your Saturday clients. So if there's a wedding or anything, you could totally go to them. It just can't happen at the facility. So I don't think it'll hurt your business, but it's just exactly keeping in mind the neighbors. So I just don't want you to feel like, hey, I can't take you. You could just go on-site to those clients at their spaces or their event rental halls and stuff like that. Okay?
Yeah, all right,
Thank you.
All right. If there anyone from the public here to speak for, well, let me first, are there any other council with questions? Okay. Is there anyone from the public for or against or have any questions relative to this applicant? I don't see anybody raising their hand. So this is an abutter at, I think it's 1416 Oakwood. Below are my concerns regarding special permit. Parking is a limited commodity on Longwood and even more limited on Oakwood. Therefore, I would like to know how many parking spaces will be taken up by Ms. Alvarez's clients. How many on Longwood, how many on Oakwood? So the clients would park where? On Longwood or on Oakwood?
Longwood.
Okay, so they'd be restricted to Longwood Avenue. And right in front of 45 Longwood? Okay. And again, I'm sorry if this, and I just let me make this clear for the public too, because this sounds like torture, and it probably is. But that's why we set up, ages ago, they set up residential districts for residents, and they set up commercial districts where you wouldn't have to go through this stuff. But this is your choice, so I just want to make, okay, so I'm not trying to be mean or nothing, but just the way it kind of rolls. What will be the hours and days of operations? This is a quiet residential neighborhood, and I don't think it should be disturbed with early morning or late evening additional traffic. Well, I think we got that covered. And I didn't even read this before we did this. Will the number of chairs be limited? If so, well, by what number? Okay, well, how about that? 1. Boy, so far 3 for 3. How many customers per day are anticipated, and will customer appointments be overlapping? Well, I think we anticipated that too. So we've got, what, 3 or 4 clients a day, and none are overlapping.
Correct.
Okay, so we're just going to say, no. Okay, and then if the business grows and more chairs are necessary, does a special permit need an amendment? Boy, I'll tell you what, talk about 5 for 5 by the chairman. Pretty good, huh? Well, but that's no shock. Then he goes into some compliments about the Ward 3 counselor, but we have enough of those all the time, so we don't want to hear those. Okay, usually I get yelled at, so that's okay. Okay, all right. So with that, we have several things on the table. Did you want to add anything else? Does Dad want add anything else? Okay. Okay, and I think the public is good to go, so we'll just get a
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
on the motion to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Motion to approve the special permit as
Second.
amended?
Okay, motion to approve special permit with the following conditions. Let's see, the hours, the days of the week could be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The hours are 2 to 8. Parking is going to be on street, but only on Longwood Avenue, not on Oakwood. Clients are by appointment only. Clients will be 1 person at a time. No deliveries, 3 to 4 waiting, and then 1 chair. Those are the conditions on the permit. Council Sullivan.
Yeah, were we going to, on that parking restriction, that it had to be in front of the house also, wasn't it?
In front of the house on Longwood Avenue.
Right.
Yeah, in front, I'll make that clear, Mike. In front of the house. Okay. On the motion as amended, all in favor? Aye. Anyone no? Okay, we got a 5-love. Okay, so I think you heard what I said to the prior applicant, but just let me repeat. So generally, we don't meet in the summer until the first Tuesday in August, so that would be August 7th. There is some talk that there's a possibility that we might have a special city council meeting on this Thursday, the 28th. If that's the case, Mike, you may have to chair the meeting. You'll chair the committee report, because there's a 50-50 chance I can't be here. So I just want to make that clear. So if we do meet in special meeting on Thursday, I will recommend to the council president and/or to the mayor with whom I conferred this today that we add this as well as a yoga studio to Thursday's agenda. And if that's the case, then we'll vote on it. Well, we'll recommend it Thursday, and the full body will vote on it Thursday night. And then if we approve it, then you can come in Friday, get your permit, and off you go. If not, then it's August 7th. And I really appreciate you coming in tonight. As you know, as we had a lot of back and forth on this, and we were going to have a special meeting on August 7th anyhow. So, but we tried our best to move it forward. Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you and your dad coming in. Real honor to see you both, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So, you folks think this is easy? This isn't easy. All right. Let's see. Aaron, would you do me kindness and corral Senator Humison, please? And if you could corral Drs. Reich and Mr. McAndrews. And if I could get a motion, please. Take number 4 off the table.
Motion to take up number 4 off the table?
Second.
On the motion, take number 4 off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Ordered that the committee invite in our state delegation to address concerns and offer up options on changing the city's formula for state funds to assure a quality education for our students. In doing so, we would need to look closely at Chapter 70 funding as well as charter reimbursement. Let's see, so, yeah, so Rep. Vega, if you would just take a seat. Senator Humison, welcome. If you would just take a seat, sir. Drs. Reich, if you just take a seat over there. Peter, actually, Counselor, I'm going to have you slide over, if you would, with your son. Peter, if you could sit there and move that mic over.
Senator?
So we'll just. Okay, while we're gathering here, let me introduce Councilor Vacan, Councilor Lisi's son, Councilor McGivern, have each joined us. Also with us are, before we go to the people here, our School Committee Man Sheehan is with us, School Committee Man Burks is with us. I don't see any other elected officials. Water Commissioner Barrett's with us, but that's a big highlight. And so we're honored by all of you being here. With us, we have Dr. Steve Drake, Senator Don Humison, Rep. Aaron Vega, and the Holyoke Teacher Association President Pete McAndrew. And all your mics are on. Now, we don't have the maker of the order in tow at this point. I think the order, although he advised me earlier today that he would be attending, I did receive an email from Rep. Vega after 5 o'clock. I didn't have a chance to, so I brought my computer, Aaron, but it was just kind of late in the day to go over that. But I know that, now, and one last thing, Devin, do you want to come in and grab a seat over there? Why don't you, Devin? That'd be helpful. Yeah, right next to Joe. Yeah, if you would. I think it'd be helpful to have Devin come in. Joe, if you want to swap microphones. Yeah, if you would. Now, I really appreciate the public being here, and I know a lot of people here for various reasons, and generally we don't have this many attendees, but it's still nice to see nevertheless. Dennis, are you okay right there, or did you want to come in and join us? No, I'm fine. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Dennis. No, nobody here bites, I don't think. Most of us don't. Oh, Joe, that's par for the course. But Joe, that's what makes it fun. So really appreciate the public being here. This is not a public meeting, but there has never been a case where if the public wanted to speak, that we wouldn't suspend the rules and allow the public to speak. So we would generally entertain that. The last thing is just as a kind of, and we're joined by Councilor McGee, the maker of the order. Now, and I always get yelled at for doing this, but that's okay because I have the gavel until such time as it changes. It is 7:20. Just to be fair to this is not going to be a 3-hour meeting. It probably could be. It could easily be a 3-hour meeting. But it's not fair to the public who's here for other issues to have a meeting really go past the 1-hour mark. Now, I don't know if we're going to go that far, but when we get close to 8:15, when we get close to 8 o'clock, I will sort of take a time out and see if the public wants to maybe ask some questions. When we get close to 8:15, we're going to wind it down because you just got to be fair to the committee and to the people here for other issues. And so I just want everybody to sort of say their piece as it is. So With that, we'll turn over to Councilor McGee. Councilor?
Thank you. First, let me thank Representative Vega, Senator Hudson-Vernier, Dr. Reich, school committee members. I filed the order because as we're seeing within the budget and when we talk with other members of different committees, you can see that our net school spending is we're just getting over it. And our schools are in need of sufficient funds in order to run programs and in essence help our teachers and our students. We learned in the budget process currently that if we didn't have the relief funds coming in the way they did, we would have had a deficit for our schools. That's not fair. In speaking with Dr. Reich, other members of the community, especially Dr. Reich, he's been open with this council as to what's going on in the budget process, which has been problematic when I first came on many moons ago. So he's been very transparent, trying to tell us their needs and everything else, but the problem is, they need furniture for the schools, 20-year-old furniture. They're going to need $300,000 to redo all the schools for that. Doors for security, cameras, I mean, the list goes on and on. We all know the problems, but the problem is the formula coming from the state side in order to help fund the schools, in my view, is a little bit off. Mr. McAndrews from the teachers union came to me and said, we need help. What can you do? So I filed the order to get the conversation started. And in essence, create a unified front going back to the state. Not everyone picking on the state. It's not the state's fault. I think we just need to readdress the formula as a unified front in order to help our schools get the sufficient funding that they need. So therefore, I started the process by starting the order. However, the delegation or the school department or everybody else as a group wants to go forward, we can take it up tonight, table it, and keep going to ultimately get to where we need. But the whole thing is to start it right now. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, why don't you sort of, or do you want to, or Don or Aaron? Okay, so Aaron, okay, Rep. Vega, please,
Sure.
go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor, and all members of the committee, and Todd, thank you for the order. We welcome the conversation, obviously. Two quick things. The material I sent an email to you and to Ryan, I hope you'll share with the committee. It's just stuff we're going to reference tonight. Didn't expect you to read through it, but it explains the foundation formula, explains really what I think we're here to talk about is the recommendations to changing that formula, the foundation recommendations. So that material, we're going to probably reference it, so you'll have all that for your.
So what I'm going to say, and so Rep. Vega is referencing Ryan Allen. Mm-hmm. Ryan is the City Council Administrative Assistant. Ryan runs the cameras and runs the microphones while we're here. So Ryan is filming this meeting. So Ryan, if you would forward everything that Rep. Vega just referenced to the city clerk, and the clerk will then forward them all to City Council. Is that fair?
Yep.
Thank you.
And then the last thing I'll say, just in reference to Councilor McGee's, President McGee's statements, we couldn't agree more. I mean, we've been talking about this, and the senator probably since he was in the House, and myself at least for 6 years, and when I sat with you in the council. The main thing that we're trying to work on now is the foundation recommendations that were 3 years old, done in 2015. And they would look at the current formula to update it. The formula was created in 93, as you probably all know. One of the important things to note, when it was created in 93, they did 7 years of an implementation plan. So they made these goal lines or these benchmarks for 7 years of the investments that they wanted to do. That's what we're looking to try to do now, with these looking at sort of changing and updating the formula, and then creating some sort of guidelines and some kind of goals for the legislature. The bill does not... It's not a money bill. It does not dictate how much money should be spent. It doesn't move any money. And the bill recently, as far as legislative time, recently the Senate did pass it 38-0. And it came over to the House, this bill to look at changing the foundation based on the recommendations by the committee. And I submitted a letter in support, got 97 of my colleagues to sign on to the letter, so 97 out of 160. There was a letter sent out from the committee sort of indicating what we've done as a legislature in progress on these recommendations. And there's currently advocacy groups, including the MTA and the AFT, that will probably be doing a rebuttal. I also have received, just to start, the letter of recommendation support from Mayor Methuen, who was a former state senator, back in '93, I believe, was there when he did when the foundation review was first established. So he's in support of the changes. And the last thing I will say before we move on is that we are looking to, exactly as the councilor said, build that sort of unified front, hopefully around this issue, around the foundation recommendations.
Okay, thanks, Rep. Vega. Senator Humison?
I'll just echo what Representative Vega said. The Foundation Budget Review Commission met several years ago, put forward a report. We, as a legislature, have never been able to really act on that report because of financial issues and because of lack of will. Now we're finally getting to the point where we are hearing from our constituents and where there is enough initiative among the members to begin to take some action on that report to initiate the findings of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. The foundation budget, as Aaron said, is very old. Things have changed drastically in our school district since 1993. And so I think everybody agrees that we need to continue to do as much as possible to fund, to provide the funding for you, our cities and towns, through Chapter 70 and through the other ways that we fund education to our districts. So I thank Councilor McGee, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us in, and this is a conversation I think that we welcome.
Well, and I really appreciate Don and Aaron being in, just so the public knows, this is, I think, the fifth or sixth time they've come in since we reformatted this committee, so it's nice. Peter, why don't you, do you want to weigh in at this point from the teacher's perspective, or do you want to?
Sure, I'll tell you how we got here.
Yeah, please.
Dr. Reich and I had met, we're having a problem in Holyoke with retaining teachers and attracting teachers, and I think this valley is full of tremendously talented young people, and we need to retain those people here in Holyoke, and we need to attract them to our Holyoke public school system. In the last 3 years since state takeover, we've been having a problem with retaining teachers, and I think the children of Holyoke, they deserve that consistency of dedicated educators. So that's kind of what started the conversation between Dr. Reich and I that prompted us to come to City Council to issue that statement.
And Pete, did it kind of go out beyond that, or after you had that initial conversation with Dr. Reich, what other conversations have you had relative to this?
Yeah, so that's kind of what prompted our move to come down to City Council, I think, a month ago. And since then, we've been looking at ways to strategize ways to retain teachers, to attract quality educators to Holyoke. And that's something that we're going to work on throughout the summer, I think, probably moving into next year as well.
All right, Dr. Reich?
Yeah, I mean, some of what I'll say is what I said the other night during our budget hearing. You know, one of the things that has been a challenge for cities like Holyoke, and Holyoke's not alone, is every year we're asked to do more with less as a school district. And every year since I've been here, at least, we've had to cut around $5 million from the budget by basically balancing on our head, you know, cutting positions at the central office. We had, last year we had to do some cutting at the school level. And this year we're fortunate that, you know, we had resources for students coming from Puerto Rico, and that's just one-time resources that helped us balance the budget. And so this year we were fortunate, while other communities are forced to continue to cut teachers and programs. And it really falls on gateway cities and urban cities in the state. And you can see what's happening in Chicopee right now. They're struggling around balancing their budget, and they've had to lay off teachers there. And while the news is not as challenging in Holyoke this year, we do forecast that in the future it will be. The challenge is, you know, the city of Holyoke can only fund us at the net school minimum, which is the minimum that the state determines that a school system needs. The average community in Massachusetts spends 20 to 25% over net school minimum. And I used to work in a community that had the luxury of being able to give more to the schools than what the minimum was. And to Holyoke, that would represent another $20 million. Imagine what we could do with $20 million as a school district. What's happened over time is, unfortunately, the formula for funding schools does not fully reimburse for charter, for students that leave for charter, and that's obviously something that's, we've lost students to charter over the years. It doesn't fully fund special education costs, of which we have a high number of students who are special needs, but many who go to out-of-district placements and need out-of-district placements. So I'm certainly not diminishing the need, but that's not fully reimbursed every year. And we see rising healthcare costs every year, and what we get from the state does not adequately cover the annual expenditures, and so that's why we face an annual deficit, especially if we want to compensate our staff. I'm really grateful that a lot of staff members are here tonight, many teachers, but it's not just teachers, it's our custodians, it's our paraprofessionals, it's our clerks, it's everyone that works in the school system deserves to be compensated fairly. And to Mr. McAndrew's point, we've talked a lot about how we maintain a competitive salary schedule here in Holyoke, which is important. We certainly want to compensate our teachers. Our teachers work really hard. They work long hours. They also, working in a city is challenging, and so need to be compensated well. But we also want programs. We need programs for students who deserve to have, we have a lot of English language learners, we have a lot of special education students, and we need more programming for students. So, unfortunately, we're asked to do more with less, with a formula that doesn't really support the needs of a district like ours. And so one of the things that Pete and I discussed is it's important that there be a unified front. There's too much divisiveness everywhere in this country right now, and I think it's important that we all as a community get around something that we can all rally around, which is the need to better support our schools. And I know that's something that the delegation has been very supportive of, the teachers union has been very supportive of, and the city council has. And I think that's something that as a community it's important that we advocate for the needs of the children and the families in the Holyoke Public Schools.
Thank you, Steve. Devin?
Yes, thank you all for bringing us all out tonight. I appreciate this time, and I mean, I have been probably living the foundation budget for the past 3 or 4 years, not only my role in the school committee, but I'm also the incoming president of the Mass Association of School Committees. So I was there at every hearing that was held across the Commonwealth regarding the foundation budget. And I mean, this all stems from 1993 in the Hancock v. Driscoll case, where it was ruled that the state has an enforceable duty to provide education to public schools for their children that they enroll. And whether students are rich or poor and without regard to the fiscal capacity of the community. And I think that is really important, that it was ruled that it is without regard to the fiscal capacity of the community. And our Commonwealth is failing not only Holyoke, not only gateway cities, but many communities across the Commonwealth. And I work with rural school districts up in the Berkshires, and they are having the same similar struggles as we are in Holyoke. And I think that I applaud Senator Humison and the Senate for unanimously passing the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Committee and Representative Vega and his efforts, and that the House has, I will say, repeatedly stalled to bring it to a vote. And repeatedly leadership doesn't sign on to this. So as a community, I think it's important that we urge the legislature that we want to see these recommendations enforced, but we only have so many voices. And Representative Vega is our voice, and his peers in Western Mass voiced it. But I mean, the other alternative in which we are working on, and which has been brought up and hasn't been mentioned yet, is that there is a growing movement, especially now that the Fair Share Amendment will not be appearing on the ballot, and we could see a reduction in the sales tax, that another case may be necessary. I mean, Brockton is pushing forward with another court case for fair and equitable funding in the Commonwealth. Worcester, their city council has been discussing it. It's an executive session at the current time. But I think that Holyoke, and there's discussions that Pete and actually everyone here in this table, along with the mayor, met 2 weeks ago, so I think to discuss all these different things about funding. And I think that if Holyoke if we cannot find relief with revisions to the foundation budget, and even I believe now, and I'm not going to, and this is going to be somewhat pessimistic, even if we pass these recommendations, I now question where the revenues are going to come from for this in the Commonwealth. But we may need to look towards legal action also. And I think it's something that other communities are doing it. It started in Brockton in 1993. They were the leaders in that. And I think that we have to keep all options open to look for our ability from the Commonwealth to fund our students. I mean, we are repeatedly getting hit with terms around health insurance, funding of ELL students, funding of special education students. I mean, the foundation budget, one of the recommendations is just to add special education reimbursement from 15% to 16%. We're looking for 1 percentage point. We're looking for growth of inflation for health insurance to be separate from that of regular inflation. And we're looking that retiree health insurance can actually be part of the foundation budget. I mean, these are just some basic things that we're looking for. If we just made the changes in health insurance, Holyoke would stand to gain about $6 million. $6 million if we could just include retiree health insurance in with the foundation budget. That's it. Just include retirees in with that, $6 million to help offset that. We struggle with health insurance and benefits and funding that to provide great benefits for all our city employees. But there's just little things that could help, and I think that we need to keep all options open with that. And Representative and Senator have been very open with us talking about all those options and supportive of really helping Holyoke and all the communities they represent here in Western Mass.
Yeah, Devin, really appreciate that. Well said. And I, for one, based upon what you just enunciated, if there's some kind of a letter that you want to propose that we send from this body, I'd happily file the order relative to especially the healthcare insurance. That sounds like a pretty straightforward letter, and we could send that to Spraker DeLeo, and I'm sure Rep. Vega would hand deliver it to him if we needed to. Okay. I want to get counselors' questions. If counselors have questions, counselors, Councilor Lisi. Sure, absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming down, everyone. I have a few really brief questions, and I'm sure it's very detailed what the foundation budget reform proposal looks like, but where are there revenue streams identified in that reform? No. And so can you give a brief overview of what the reform study says and how it talks about restructuring that formula at this point? Is there a concrete recommendation, or is it several recommendations?
I would say there are several recommendations. The only one that's not, I mean, you're going to get a bunch of this stuff in your email, but one of the ones I would say maybe is not as concrete as some of the other ones, but would be critical to places like Holyoke and probably 200 other cities and communities throughout the Commonwealth, is modernizing the ELL low-income components to the formula. Realistically looking at what it costs communities to bring those students into a place where they're not going to fall behind. We know all the great effort that our teachers have been doing on the third grade reading levels, and so making sure that we can fund that. So there's no dedicated funding. No, it's just general funds. I would just say, I think that from the grand bargain, we will not be seeing a reduction in the sales tax this year. A ballot question, that will be removed as well. And I think it's also just about looking at the fact that right now we're in a budget cycle that, some people say we have a $900 million surplus. It's probably going to be a little bit less because we have a couple of final things to do. But let's say we end this fiscal year with $750 million surplus. Some people would call that surplus. I wouldn't. I'd call that unspent revenue, that we didn't fully fund the charter school reimbursement. We didn't fully fund Chapter 7 circuit breaker. We got it, I think, to 72% this year. And again, those funds come in halfway through the year after Reich and the teachers have already been laid off or they've cut down hours, right? So getting an influx of money halfway through the semester, it's nice, but you've already made those cuts. And I think Devin can probably answer more of that.
Yeah, and what I'll say, and I will forward Ryan the report to send out to everyone and kind of an executive summary of it, but the big things that would be important for Holyoke is that it would make ELL an increment added to the base rate per pupil rather than a separate one. It would also allow you to get larger funding for ELL students who are also vocational students. So right now there is a rate if you are a general ed student, there's a rate if you're a vocational student, there's a rate if you're an ELL student, and those are buckets. And those are exclusive to each other. So if you are an ELL student who is also a vocational student, you only get one. So you'd get ELL. It doesn't give any type of differential if you are also a vocational student to help fund that vocational program. It would recognize inclusion for special education as one of the preferred methods of educating students in the Commonwealth, and help to fund also an inclusion model, because our way in which we educated special education and ELL students in 1993 are very different from the way we look at that now. And like I said before, it would increase the out-of-district special ed cost rate to capture full cost before the circuit breaker, and then that 15%, it would assume that instead of 15% of students are special education, it would assume 16% of students are special education. And what's our percentage?
Our percentage is 24%.
In Holyoke. So it would increase that assumption just by 1%. I mean, there's a lot of other things, especially around health insurance, that it would provide for. It would be in line with the average GIC rates with that, and the retiree health insurance, which would help us tremendously, and calculating inflation separately. But I'll send that out. It's a dense document with an executive summary, but there's the top part, if you read nothing but the first page, that will give you at least a good primer on it.
Yeah, and then also fully funding charter reimbursement.
Yeah. And this body has sent a letter to our state delegation in support of fully funding the charter school reimbursement this past fiscal year. I understand that it's not been funded, but we did make an effort earlier on. The follow-up question that I have, I think, is mostly directed to the state delegation. We are a Commonwealth. And I'm sure that as much as possible in the State House, you try not to pick communities versus other communities in the policies that you're enacting. But given that we are residentially segregated across the Commonwealth into communities that are more and less affluent, and we have some communities that are able to go above the net school minimum in terms of school spending at 20-25%. Is there an opportunity to live up to our name as the Commonwealth and do some redistributive type of policy that says if you're a community that is able to bring in X amount of revenue for your school system or some other line item, that then you're contributing more to the state budget to fund schools as a whole throughout the Commonwealth. I don't know if there's an appetite or if you could speak to that in any way.
I'll just take one little stab at that. I mean, so part of it is that one thing that's important to understand that, so even the communities that, remember, 20-25% is the average, which means some communities are spending 40% above the net school minimum, right? Two things to keep in mind. One is that with if this were to pass and we re-looked at the formula, everyone's held harmless. No one's going to get less than the current year. If we implemented it this year and was going to be for the FY20 budget, no community is going to get less than they got in 19. And if we had, let's say, a 7-year rollout plan, at the end, everybody would get more. But it looks at those communities, your Lowell, your Lawrence, Brockton, Fall River, Holyoke, Springfield, Chicopee, Westfield, and says they're going to get those increases sooner, because they've got the demographics, they've got the ELL students, they've got the specialties, they've got the poverty levels, and they have communities that can't. That's not necessarily into it, but it's understood that they have communities that can't kick in more. So when you look at like the Teach Plus language, the Teach Plus letter, you have teachers and administrators from Boston and Springfield and Salem and Randolph and Lawrence and Holyoke, and even places that are a little bit better off, like Amherst. Right, so I think the other thing to keep in mind is that we pride ourselves, and I thank all of our teachers and administrators that are here today for their work. We pride ourselves in Massachusetts as having some of the best educational outcomes, but underneath that, we also have some of the biggest inequalities. So it's almost second to none. So you have some of the highest performing schools and districts, but you have some of the biggest income inequalities and gaps in those achievements. So we are trying with that argument of the Commonwealth is definitely sort of fueling this. But I don't think there's no way. I mean, similar to people were talking about cities have opted out of marijuana, that they shouldn't get some of the state revenue, or that you can't really parse that out. I think that's like we'd love to get 1% of the sales tax revenue from the Holyoke Mall, right? I mean, that would be great if we got. Imagine how much money we as Holyoke are giving to the state in sales tax revenue from the mall, and what that's actually done to our downtown. We do get tax revenue, obviously, but
yeah, I guess my thought in terms of Yeah, so of course, if we change the foundation reform budget formula, then everybody is going to get more at the end. But in terms of where the state is able to draw revenue from, I wonder if there's an opportunity for more affluent communities to contribute more to the success of the Commonwealth as a whole.
Well, Councilor, remember, of course, that those affluent communities have representatives and senators that would be fighting to keep every dollar in their community as well. And would probably fight us tooth and nail if we tried to drain it off to Western Mass, which of course is our goal. But it is a challenge because they are represented as well. And they're certainly willing to stand up and fight for that dollar.
Thank you.
Any other counselors want to weigh in? I don't see everybody with their hands up. Actually, it's a good time then, so good. Are there any members of the public that want to address us on this specific topic? I don't see anyone raising their hands, so there's that. Okay, Counselor, what would you have us do at this point? What's your pleasure?
Thank you. For me, I mean, we can table this, and I can follow up with everyone that's involved here, try and get a consensus as to whether we're doing a letter or whatever it is we need. I think something that was pointed out by Rep. Vega is, it's not going to take place, whatever happens till 2020 for that budget. And that is key for us to really keep this going, because from the budget process, what we learned is we got a freebie this year in the sense of some aid coming in to help us balance our budget. Next year, projections are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Syke, $6 million shortfall and the potential of layoffs. That was made clear in our meeting, that L word. So we have to be really careful. We have to get in front of this and keep pushing, because we know next year there is a problem. So for me, not a problem. I thank you for taking it up, starting this process, but I really do appreciate you guys coming down, but we have to push this now because next year is problematic.
Okay.
Councilor, can I give just one little update? And Representative Vega talked about this before. Where we are now, right now in Boston, with 5 weeks left in this legislative session, and just 1 week left before the start of the new fiscal year, is that the House and Senate conferees are meeting on the state budget that the House passed and the Senate passed. So the numbers may be a little bit different regarding the different educational line items between the two branches, but the goal is, I hope, to take some of that surplus dollar that we've heard about, and I'd really like to see us use the Senate numbers, because they were a little bit more generous, because we passed our budget a little bit later in the fiscal year, and we knew that we had a little bit more money to spend. But that will mean that there will be an increase coming back this year, not just to Holyoke, but to all cities and towns across the state. It doesn't look like that budget will be ready by the start of the fiscal year, but doesn't matter, because the governor's already filed his 1/12 budget that will continue the current level of spending into the new fiscal year until the budget passes. But that budget hopefully will include more money for Chapter 70, more money for special ed circuit breaker, for Puerto Rican refugees, for charter school reimbursements, underperforming and chronically underperforming schools. So a lot of the things that you've spoken about here and previously will be funded at a higher level this year, with luck and hope, than they ever have been in the history of the state. That's a product of the Commonwealth. The economy is doing pretty well for a change, and a year ago we were dealing with $800 million in deficits. This year we have $900 million in surplus. I'll take it. That's great. But if we can put money towards some of that surplus towards education, that would be helpful for all of our communities, Holyoke included.
Devin?
I will just say, and I don't want to get into an argument here, but I don't really agree that we're in a surplus as a state. I mean, we're not funding the charter reimbursement. We're not funding all of our obligations towards education. I mean, we should first, I'm not in a surplus with my home budget until I pay all my bills. And the state hasn't paid all their bills. Because we're still shorted $1 million on the charter reimbursement that we didn't get, and so are many other communities. So we aren't at a surplus. We have revenues that are coming in, but we haven't met all of our obligations.
Okay, School Committee Man Dennis Burks, please.
Thank you, and I'll be quick. And I want to bring up kind of the irony of us being in receivership now and still talking about some of the same difficulties that we were having before receivership, which was the foundation budget, which was making it difficult for us to run our district effectively. And we have a receiver here who is speaking the same things that we were speaking before and asking for some of the same things. And it's good that the state sees that we were trying our best before receivership, and we're still working our tails off. The teachers are most definitely, the students. We have some of the greatest students in this district that are working their tails off to do well and do what they're supposed to do. My thing is the Senate passed unanimously to change the foundation budget. And for us and all of us who are in here, we're here for a reason. We want to be able to help in this fight and fight together. So what is some of the pushback from those who didn't sign on to the letter? And what are you hearing from those in the House of why they wouldn't vote for the new foundation budget, so that we know where we can focus our fight, who we need to focus on, and how we can get those votes?
Aaron?
So I would say, and I would just, first I just echo, I guess maybe the irony, if it's the right way, we're making all these strides in Holyoke, right? Graduation is up, dropout is down, we're gonna build a new school. I mean, it's like all these great things, and yet we're looking at a $6 million shortfall a year from now. So it's frustrating. I think the general pushback is the bringing together the idea that this bill, Senate 2235, is it?
Yeah, it's on the last page.
That this bill, 2325, is $1 billion bill, and it's not. This bill does not, you cannot hold a future legislature to any funding and any recommendation, you can't hold them to any current spending, but you can't tell them what they have to do 5 years from now. We can put recommendations forward, just like they did in '93. So I think it's a little bit of education that we're doing on some of those other members, and there was a letter that came out of the Education Committee. Like I said, there's going to be a rebuttal letter being done. It's already been drafted. So it's education on the members, really. And I think that if leadership, if we get, I got the letter from the mayor from Methuen. If we start getting these letters from all the mayors and other city councils and school committee members, and it goes to leadership, to the speaker's office, hopefully we can get the momentum with only 5 weeks left. It's the fear that if we don't get it done, that we're going to be refound next year, go through the whole same process of hearings, go through the whole same process, and we'll go through at least another budget year without doing any changes. I think it's just a matter of, I think quite honestly, since I guess the news isn't reporting on this story, even though I think it's pretty darn important, I created a little bit of a hornet's nest when I did this letter. Because I think that that leadership had to sort of plan what they wanted to do for the next 6 weeks to end out this session. Right? We got a busy 6 weeks ahead of us. And I got 97 of my colleagues, despite some pushback to some of them, to sign on to this letter. So we're trying to make it an issue for these next 6 weeks. And any support we can get of letters obviously helps us. But I think that they weren't thrilled to have the majority of the House say we want to take this up.
Are some of those folks that are giving pushback, are they from some of the communities that are able to pay a lot over net school spending?
That would be easy. That would be easy, but it's actually not. It's actually, there's
They're not worried about not getting less money, like we said. You're still going to
the ones that are educated get it. So I think that's part of it, right? So if you do, so if you're representing a community that is spending $20,000 per student combined with the state aid and what you're able to put in from the district, they get it. A lot of them get it. A lot of them have signed on. It was bipartisan. I got the minority leader Brad Jones signed the letter, right? I got almost the entire Republican delegation on the letter. So it's very bipartisan, and there are a number of legislators that come from communities that you wouldn't think this would affect, like let's say Amherst for a second, but they have a strong and they have a large poverty population, ELL learners, and they're getting more. And so they see the writing on the wall that even places like Amherst and West Springfield, right? So Representative Finn has become much more educated on the charter school issue and these issues because it's now affecting his district. It wasn't an issue for him 5 years ago. It's going to be a bigger issue next year and even bigger the year after that. So I think it's that education and that experience. If the reps experience it in their district. And just like anything, when you're on city council, when you're a state rep or a state senator, you don't know till you know. So I think I have a pretty good relationship with the city council and the school committee. Devin's been my lead on this since we were at those meetings. If the reps don't have a good relationship with their city council, with their school committee, maybe they're not as aware of it. So I think that's why the school committee members were the ones that made all these phone calls during the week that we were getting these letters, and people listened.
Councilor Valentin?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick point of clarification. Thank you for the updates and the information that's been shared. The phrase Puerto Rican refugees was used, and that's actually not correct. They're evacuees, they're U.S. citizens, so they're not refugees. So it's the same as the folks who may have moved here from Texas because of Hurricane Harvey or from New Orleans because of Hurricane Katrina. So just wanted to make sure that I clarified that for my fellow Puerto Ricans.
Thank you for your clarification.
Sure. Councilor McGivern?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to thank Dennis for joining us, because when Dennis speaks, I think it opens up a whole new venue that I have been biting my lip not to say this evening, Mr. Chairman, so Dennis opened it up. Why are we in receivership? Why don't we have local control over this? And this is no disrespect to Dr. Zreich. I think he knows that what I'm saying is we've known the foundation formula has been off for years. And we know special education is what's killing us. And if we link a big portion of what we do in public schools to poverty, then we know the reason we don't get the money is because the bedroom communities will take care of their own, but they miss their moral obligation, if not their ethical, should be their legal obligation, to take care of the children of impoverished families across the Commonwealth. And that's what this has always been about. Test scores, are you kidding me? Graduation rates, our class numbers are down. The school population is down. Our teachers' morale is the worst it has ever been. The worst. Our teachers are leaving the city of Holyoke because of a number of things, which is not what tonight is about. You're telling me, Don, it's unlikely when you said that you're going to be fighting with the votes from the eastern part of the state that this will pass? So my opinion, Mr. Chairman, is we can't wait to 2020. Let's get into lawsuit now. That's the only way Holyoke is going to be recognized, is if we sue for what should be coming from across the Commonwealth to take care of our kids and to take care of our teachers. And if you don't take care of our teachers, you're not taking care of our kids.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. So just to recap, just for the public, so what Rep. Vega referenced earlier is going to be submitted to the city clerk. Those will all become public records. What Mr. Sheehan, Devin indicated, he'll send it to us, and we'll funnel that to the city clerk, and that will also become a public record. If Senator Humison has anything else,
I submitted this in hard copy, but I'll do it electronically. I'll get the email from Representative Vega.
Don, if you send it to Ryan Allen.
And I'll do that. I'll send it to you electronically.
And Ryan will forward it to Brenna Murphy McGee.
Great.
Brenna Murphy McGee, so to forward to the full city council. What I don't, I heard what the maker of the order said about tabling this, and we will respect that. Sometimes when we table things, sometimes we lose a little bit off the fastball, but Don and Aaron have been really great about coming in, and so why don't we reconvene at our regular meeting? We'll file the order like I always do in the fall, and then we'll figure you guys can come in and
we can update you then on what's going on.
Yeah, in
what happened at the end of the
November,
session.
December, and then we can also convene with Devin and the school committee people at that point. So, Devin?
Yeah, and I actually think that Steve and I may have some additional information to some of the comments that Councilor McGivern said about the lawsuit and different things. If we even look, we might be able to bring some stuff to you in regards of what can help Holyoke by probably after your summer recess in September or so. We may have some information that we can share that is maybe less topical to what our state delegation is doing, but more topical to some of the concerns that Pete brought in and just some things to regroup over the summer. It's just not, that information is not clear yet, and I think that once through the summer, Steve and I are going to be meeting with people from Brockton, discussing some of that to be able to get some information back. I think that we can get some stuff to you that's more concrete for some next steps for Holyoke.
Okay, great. So we'll get that to go through Brenna Murphy McGee and Councilor McGee.
So I was just leaving open to however you guys want to, but you could say it's complied with. I understand the order was to bring in the delegation, and I don't want to keep dragging them in. They've been very fair to us. So you can say it's complied with. and then I'll file, or we all can file one to have Devin come in with everyone else to get that information.
I'd rather
to
do
proceed.
that.
Want to do that?
I'd
Make
rather
it
do
easier?
that. So it would, just for, just for efficiency purposes of the committee. So we'll say it was
Make a motion,
well, time out. So we're just for everybody here right now, before I recognize anybody on a motion, we're going to suggest a motion that this has been complied with, meaning that we had the state delegation in, but we will take this up again. Don and Aaron have been very good over the past 4 or 5 years that we've been here, and we've had them in several times. And we're also expecting to get several communications. Before I recognize anybody, I motion, right after that, we're going to get a second motion, which is to take about a 5-minute recess to let people sort of work their way out of the room, okay? So we can do that. So I'll recognize Councilor Tallman.
I'll make a motion that item 4, McGee's order, has been complied with.
Second.
On the motion, on discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion been complied with.
Make a motion that we take a quick 5-minute recess.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to recess 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I thought they were giving us like an update of stuff, but it was just about the schools. I thought we were going to get to Apple.
I missed the reminder, so you might just throw that. Okay. All right, cool. All right.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, yet, or is that going to be coming when we fund the budget? I'm not sure. I think the budget passes. It just doesn't seem like, I don't know these kids, but I know him. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow, a lot of notes. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience. And
Well, I wasn't here last time.
if I could get a motion to suspend and take 5 and 6 off the
So
table.
moved.
On the motion to suspend the rules, to take items 5 and 6 as a package and take them off the table. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion, okay. Item 5, that the city council Vote to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Holyoke and the Holyoke Housing Authority for the acquisition of the land identified by the Board of Assessors, which was the former Our Lady of Perpetual Help Parish block. Purpose of the MOU is to secure the block as a site for development of a school building or a housing development if a school building is not developed. Item 6, the City Council vote to approve a consensual order of taking or deed in lieu of taking in accordance with the purchase and sale agreement between the City of Holyoke and the Roman Catholic Bishop of Springfield to acquire by right of eminent domain a parcel known as 71 Maple Street. So, with us, we have Chris from Urchel. Chris Urchel, thank you. Chris from the Law Department, Marcus Morero, the Director of the Office of Planning and Economic Development, still with us, so the regular members of the committee. Councilor Bacon is still here. Councilor McGivern is still here. Marcos, we last convened on the 18th, a week prior, and we tabled this till tonight. In the meantime, I hope councilors have had the chance to read the fully executed property acquisition agreement. I know I have. I think also in the meantime, we were advised that we receive an MOU. I believe that MOU came in the 5 o'clock hour today. I have not reviewed that MOU at all. But that being said, that's why we have the experts here. And I think is that where you want to begin, Marcos?
We can, yes.
Or we can begin any place you want to begin. So
that would be appropriate if the chair wants to begin there.
I don't want to go out of order. Whatever order you had, Marcos. I'm just saying I haven't reviewed it, but so let's just go in whatever order you pre-planned.
Yep. Well, it's the only piece of real new information that I have to present, so that's why I'm saying that's fine. I just didn't know if the chair wanted to have new questions.
We're joined by the mayor of the city of Holyoke. Mayor, welcome. Go ahead, Marcos.
So the new information that we have for the committee today is, as the chair has mentioned, the memorandum of understanding between the Holyoke Housing Authority and the city of Holyoke. It is a very straightforward memorandum, the content of which fits on one page, double-sided. Most of the first page is the whereas clauses, which just states the facts of who owns what at this point in time in terms of that block around Chestnut Street. And what the intent is on purchasing and having this MOU. So it essentially has a couple of clauses. One is that the Housing Authority will be executing a purchase of the two diocese parcels on that block. They will be holding it for 5 years. During that period, they will not be developing it at all or transferring it to any other entity. That will be the sole right of the city to acquire it from the Housing Authority for the same price that they're acquiring it from the diocese, which is $140,000. It further restricts the Housing Authority's activities on the 3 other parcels that they own on that site. The acquisition of the property can be done in any combination of monetary considerations or real estate at a mutually agreed upon price. If at the end of the 5-year period, however, the city has not acquired the parcels, then the Housing Authority, for their troubles, would get the 2 corner parcels that do not abut each other on that block from the city to the Housing Authority. This automatically then enacts option B in the urban renewal plan, right? Option A is having a school on that block. Option B is developing housing. So it would neatly do that. The agreement is still pending, of course, City Council approval and Housing Authority Board approval, and it is binding on both parties. I think that's basically what it states there. What else am I missing? If there's no transaction with the church, then this has no effect.
Are you done? Oh, I'm sorry, Marcus.
Well, I was looking at Chris to see if I missed anything important, but
Oh,
No, I think that's it.
I really appreciate it. Mayor, did you want to add anything at this point? You're all set? Okay, thank you, Mayor. Chris, did you want to add anything?
I have nothing to add, but I'm happy to answer further questions about this. And I'll also like to point out that the attorney for the Housing Authority is here in the audience as well if questions need to be directed to her.
Okay. Okay, and welcome to you both. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. And, okay, I'll say what I said in the prior meeting. We've never once this is not a public hearing, but we've never once denied the public chance to speak. We're not there yet, but when that time comes, we will, because I always like to have counselors ask questions first if they have any, but if the public wants to speak, we'll suspend rules, and then we'll just have the regular ground rules that we always have, and we'll just go over those ground rules real quick, okay? Do any counselors want to speak on this matter? Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I'm just looking, I believe we just received this today, the MOU on this, okay. And I thought last week we discussed the Housing Authority parcel and the Matadella Church issue as separate issues. And this one, it seems like it's contingent on the sale of the church in Section 4. Is that unusual? Is that the case here? If we don't buy the church, then this is null and void?
Well, this agreement is null and void. We may want to still pursue it, but just as this contract, as this MOU is written, it would be null and void. So we would have to, if we still want to pursue the land in some other fashion, then we could still.
You still could do that?
Well, I mean, we haven't discussed it without the church at this point, but, you know, if we still want to build a school, then yes, we would have to pursue the land in some other way.
Right, okay, because I just thought last week when we discussed this, we had two separate issues, and tonight it seems like we're taking them up together, and the thought is there may be some counselors that may want to separate these two, but it looks as though if we don't vote for purchasing the church, that this issue with the Housing Authority is not going to happen unless we do it another way.
Well, I mean, maybe we have a different perception. I think what we were trying to make very clear is that nothing that the assessor discussed initiated with the diocese, the church and the land. And so that's why it's tied together in the MOU.
Okay.
Yeah, and Councilor Tallman, I would just reiterate that last week we took both orders up as a package with the assumption that they're intertwined, again, separate from the assessment issue that Assessor Duluth spoke about at the beginning of the meeting. But given that it involved acquisition of diocese property, both parties thought it was advantageous to make this a package before the council. But as Marco stated, we would have to either pursue another MOU or agreement to secure those properties at the perpetual help land if we do want to pursue the middle school project. We just thought this was an opportune project to land bank that land to get ahead of it. We do need to demonstrate to the MSBA that we have site control on that property to be able to continue to move forward with the two middle school projects.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor, based on our conversation earlier, we have to raise our hand. But you get a certain amount of deference, but we have to raise our hand regardless, okay? Thank you. Councilman McGivern.
Back in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week I asked that the votes would be separated, and I was told point blank these would be separate votes.
They are two separate votes.
Okay, so we need a separate MOU. It's as simple as that. Funding, $140,000, Mayor, where would that come from?
For the
This would be
purchase of
for the perpetual help property.
So right now the money is coming from the Housing Authority.
So the Housing Authority is going to purchase it?
Yes.
And how would we acquire it from the Housing Authority?
We have up to 5 years in the MOU to then have me put an appropriation before the council to then purchase those from the Housing Authority.
And the Housing Authority is happy if that appropriation never passes, that they will own the land for $140,000?
Yes, in the MOU, there's language that if we don't take action within 5 years, then they would also take ownership of the city-owned parcels, and then they would be able to develop it for housing.
Okay. So that's a done deal to me. You know, the Housing Authority wants the property, they can have it. Am I missing something, Chris?
If the Housing Authority wants to buy the property from the diocese, the Housing Authority is perfectly welcome to negotiate and purchase.
What are we voting on if the Housing Authority is buying it?
We're voting on the city's option to purchase the property from the Housing Authority within 5 years.
The money's not in front of us. That's our vote. I'm not going to agree to a memorandum of understanding to purchase property or take it by eminent domain if I don't know the source of the revenue to pay for it.
So the MOU isn't committing the city to buy it from the housing authority, but it's certainly committing the city to give the housing authority the other 2 parcels should the city not be able to buy it. So that is the fail-safe on the housing authority and the interest that they would have to buy it now. So in this agreement between the housing authority and the city, the housing authority gets certainty that they would have control of the full block for a specific amount of money that they can put forward. What the city is getting is certainty that the public sector would have undeniably site control over the next 5 years at a fixed price, not an escalating price. But we don't obligate the city to buy it.
Marcus, you made that perfectly clear last week, and I thank you. I thank you last week. I understand it, and I'm in favor of exploring using the property for a new school. But voting on an MOU, first of all, that's combined on 2 separate issues, and second of all, that has language, which we did not have last week, that looks like we're buying the property for $140,000, is what I'm questioning.
So one other point to clarify that, because you asked where would the $140,000 come from, it doesn't have to be an appropriation equal to $140,000. It can be an exchange of real estate of similar value or any combination thereof. There are other parcels in the neighborhood and other places that the housing authority may have interest in that we could also supplement that with.
Marcus, last week, moving up to the next item, I asked you for a breakdown, or I think it was through you, but to the superintendent of DPW of the $150,000 in immediate repairs, a line item of that, and the line item budget for what it would take to operate and own the MD Church itself. Is that available yet?
I don't have that in front of me. I apologize. The budget to have it operational will depend on what type of operation will be there. So I can't give you a very specific number for a use that I don't have now because we have to put out an RFP. I can give you a breakdown of what we believe that to constitute that $150,000. I can send you that by tomorrow.
And in the future budget, if it was based on the city assuming all the cost of operating and keeping the building open, could we do that, estimate that? Even if there's an agreement with a third party, to lease and to assume some of those costs, we have to have an idea of what those costs would be.
Well, we do have an idea. We do it for Holyoke Rose, and our cost is pretty much zero. They take on all the costs of the row house.
But I'd like to see, in that case, what are Holyoke Rose costs? Because when we did Holyoke Rose was in front of us. We did it together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bacon?
And through the chair to Marcos, when you're looking at that operations budget, my reading of the purchase and sale agreement states that the city is liable for the repair and maintenance of any of the windows, lamps, murals within that building, even though we will not own them. And I would like that expense to please be included. We've been spending thousands of dollars restoring stained glass windows in this building. And the way I read that purchase and sale agreement, we are liable not only for the maintenance of them, but repairs, any repairs needed. Thank you.
Again, I just want to clarify, as owner of any property in the city of Holyoke, the city of Holyoke is liable unless it has some other separate agreement for that property, right? So the purchase and sale language reflects the fact that we're going to own the property. However, we're looking to dispose of it through a long-term lease agreement. And in that agreement, for which there are groups that are interested already in taking on the responsibilities of the property, we would include there that tenant operator would take on those responsibilities on behalf of the city. So I just want to clarify, I'm not providing an operational budget because there's no way for me to do so. I don't know what we are operating. Our intent is not to operate this building. It is to seek an operator tenant We do know that there are some minimal costs that have to be incurred for any type of use. For example, repairing some of the roof in the back of the building, right? That we already know. And that I can provide.
Councilor Valentin.
Thank you. This is going to sound like it has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, because I was waiting for everybody to kind of go around and have their turn. But I'm just a bit confused and perplexed about the structure tonight. Earlier, I was trying to make a motion to close a public hearing, and I was told I had to raise my hand to make a motion. However, throughout this meeting, other committee members have made motions without raising their hand, and those motions have come through without any commentary. And in addition, we just had a room full of folks speaking here about the school issue, and there were folks chiming in. I didn't see them raise their hands waiting to be recognized, so now all of a sudden the mayor gets scolded on that. So I think if there's going to be some consistency issues with procedures that are so by the book and strict and rigid, then I guess there has to be consistency. So again, I know this sounds like it's totally out of order because we have been conversing about other things, but I was waiting my turn, but I needed to state that for the record because it seems like the procedure is confusing. Thank you.
Just a quick point of order. The counselor was out of order, but I let the counselor finish. And I would say every single person, before they spoke, raised their hands without exception. So if the counselor is not paying attention or texting on her phone, I can't control that. I'm running the meeting to the best of my ability, but I mean, to the best of my ability. I think every person raised their hands. Nobody chimed in otherwise. So, Mayor, I didn't mean to scold you. I don't feel like I was scolding you, especially we had a conversation about this very topic 3 hours ago. So, I mean, it's just kind of what we do here. We have to raise our hand. So, if the counselor's happy now, that's good. Councilor McGivern.
So a follow up on part of what Marcus just said. Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong. The last year or the year before, the city owns a building where the Volleyball Hall of Fame and the Children's Museum is. And we have certain costs in our budget for that building. And we've had, I'm not complaining, we've had that for years. The Volleyball Hall of Fame has always been part of some city building, starting in Wisteria's and evolving into what it is now with a projection someday to have their own, facility, their own place, hopefully, someplace where it'll attract a lot more visitors than it attracts where it is. And the Children's Museum is a perfect fit for the park and the area and the whole thing. But didn't we just replace the entire air system a couple of years ago?
We did, using a grant. And so if you'll remember the chart I made in my presentation, there was this thermometer of buildings by which the city holds certain responsibility, whether it owns it or not. And the Children's Museum and the Volleyball Hall of Fame was smack in the middle where we own it, and presumably we're getting some level of rent, but we're...
You know how much rent we're getting?
I don't know how much rent we're getting, so that's what I'm saying. Presumably we get some sort of level of rent, and hopefully it's more than $1. But I believe we also pay the electricity there. So it's inherently in our interest to fix the HVAC system so that we're paying less over time. We also used a state grant to do that. What we're proposing here is not that we would have to do brand new HVAC system, but there would be fully the responsibility of the tenant in a long-term lease arrangement, where I think the Children's Museum and the Volleyball Hall of Fame have short-term lease arrangements that doesn't make it economically practicable for them to make a very large investment. When you do a very long-term lease agreement, then it does make it economically feasible for someone to make a large investment.
And if I can get back to the question, thank you for answering, but the point is, that's what I'm asking. Because we do pay electrical bills for that building. I believe we pay water and sewer. And we do a number of repairs in that building. There's an actual line item for repairs for that building. There's another building in Heritage Park that needs a roof. And it doesn't belong to the state. Is the city going to help out that building?
No, I don't think that's a plan. I think in our presentation, we've made very clear why Meadow de la Rosa is a particularly historically significant building and has a unique history, and it is in our historic preservation plan. So just to be clear, we're not suggesting that every building that needs investment is worthy of the city buying it. We're stating that this one is particularly worthy because of its unique history. And we're also saying that and I acknowledge everything you say is true about the Children's Museum and the Volleyball Hall of Fame. In our presentation, we're trying to communicate very clearly that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to put all the responsibility on the tenant operator.
The other building I'm referring to is about 25 years old, and the machine that is housed in that building was built in 1929, or started operating in Holyoke in 1929, and was built in 1927. There's some historic value there too. But the city's not jumping in, is it?
I'm not familiar with the building that you're talking about.
So if we're being asked to do something that we all like to do, we need a budget. We need a projected budget, we need an immediate budget, and we need to know what exactly the costs are going to be, the true cost.
And we're saying that the true cost is a $50,000 acquisition, and the rest of the cost will be placed on a third-party owner, tenant operator.
Who's the third-party owner?
I can't give you that because legally I have to.
And why
do an
not come
RFP.
back when there is a third-party owner?
I can't legally do an RFP under 30B without owning it.
You can if you get into a partnership with the diocese. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Rahman?
Yes, Marcos, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, and again, I think for me, Marcos, again, I know you can't legally, but it'd be good for me to know that there's a definite, I mean, you could say there is, right? But unless I know for sure there's gonna be a long-term operator, my biggest concern as a counselor is that we get into owning a building and then there is no long-term operator. And I trust your word, I believe your department, but even if it was like a letter of interest or something from potential owner-operators, even if it was 2 or 3, that you could possibly get without breaking the law, saying, hey, if there's any potentially interested parties, just so we could see on record for me as a counselor to know, and I'm sure there's probably 1 or 2 in this building, that would alleviate a big portion of my concern is because, you know, I'm concerned that all of a sudden the city ends up with this property that we're responsible for, no official interests from a long-term tenant operator. And then I, like my colleagues, had thought there was 2 separate issues, but seeing the MOU, they are interwoven because I was really excited about the property clearly next to Lawrence, right? Even though technically that's not my ward, it still represents a big chunk of Churchill. But I thought there would be 2 totally separate issues, but I could see how they're intertwined. But that, for me, is just something that I would be interested in seeing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor.
I was just going to reiterate what Marcos was saying about, because I know Councilor McGivern was alluding, I think, to the merry-go-round. And I was just going to say, number one, there's been no imminent threat posed to the potential demolition of that, and I'm sure the city would be willing to have a conversation if we were to ever have the possibility of losing such a treasure in the community as well. And I think number two, I would also argue that the city is sort of in the driver's seat when it comes to city-owned property. And so if we wanted to change the terms of our leases with the Children's Museum or the Volleyball Hall of Fame or any other operator, we have the ability to do that. But I think what we're articulating is an interest in not having terms similar to the Volleyball Hall of Fame or the Children's Museum or Holyoke Rose, in that Monte della Rosa would be, as was demonstrated on the thermometer that was in the presentation that was given to the councilors last week, would be on the side of less city involvement, less city investment than the other groups and buildings that that were just brought up.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. My concerns relative to the reading of the purchase and sale agreement are is primarily the liability that the city will have. Once we own the building, whether we have a long-term lease or a short-term lease, we are the guarantor of last resort, if you will. So if the long-term leasing group who thinks they're in for $150,000 ends up needing $250,000 or $500,000 and they don't have it, that comes back to the city, just like any other building that we own. I mean, we went through that with the Geriatric Authority. We've been through that with other sort of quasi-held. One of my biggest concerns about the purchase and sale agreement is my understanding of the language in it makes it almost impossible for the city to sell the building. The parking only goes to the city, it doesn't go with a sale. The windows and the murals and the lamps, even if the city buys the building, are still owned by the diocese, which can remove them in 120-day notice. And to me, you're buying the building and you're getting the liability of maintaining beautiful works of art. I mean, I supported this whole process through the historic district and everything else, but I've never supported the city buying another building that needs a lot of work. But I've never seen a purchase and sale agreement whereby you buy a building, but you don't own the windows and you don't own the lamps and you don't own the murals. I mean, it's just, I don't see how the city could ever sell the building. And my understanding initially was that we were trying to do something so that we would buy it and then sell it, but the way it's written, it seems like it would be almost impossible to ever sell it. Could you help me understand if I'm misreading something in that regard?
It would not be impossible to sell the property. The building doesn't require to have parking in order to be operational. The parking requirements are imposed in different scenarios, but even when they are technically required, they can go down to special permit down to zero parking requirements. A property that doesn't have anything but a building on it, and we have many properties like that, have no other options for parking, and regularly the city allows development to happen without parking. In terms of rehab costs, I don't think anyone thinks that only $150,000 will be the cost for the rehabilitation. That is the immediate cost. It most likely is between the $250,000 to $500,000, and you know, of course, depending on how long a time period you're talking about, over 100 years, it can be more. But the bigger point is that this property is actually in remarkably good condition. And I said it last time, that if the worst thing that happened was that we couldn't immediately identify a group that were taking on this building, this would immediately be the building in the best condition in the city's portfolio that has the greatest attention and interest in preservation. I wish that we had that situation with every other building. It immediately puts us in the best position to save the building. So I obviously hear the condition, the concern. But as far as our portfolio goes, this is in a really great placement for us to do something with it.
As a follow-up through the chair, if I may. My concern is really not the parking, because of course use determines parking, and we all know that. My concern is, how do you sell a building in which you don't own the things of most value of the building? How do you accomplish that practically?
I think some of it is due to interpretation. I don't know that the lamps are the things of most value, right? Like I don't know that we couldn't get. Well, the stained glass windows definitely has a value to it, but we're faced with the reality that the church is not going to be providing those, and if the building is demolished, there aren't any windows either. They would be responsible for replacing the windows, though, and so the building will have windows, whether it's the historic windows or not, but you still have the historic structure. You know, if the paintings have to be painted over and recreated somehow or done something with that, then, you know, maybe that's an option in the future. But we're thinking here worst case, of course. I'm not suggesting here that they will be painted over.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah. I think one of the points that we're still missing here is once this is no longer church property, it's in the control of an outside group, it's also eligible for state and federal historic preservation grants. And these are, you know, quite sizable grants. They're readily available. Mm-hmm. I know that I've talked to the state historic preservation officer. This would be a high priority with them. So any additional costs beyond, when we start talking about $250,000 and stuff like that, there would be grant funds available for this type of work.
So if I may react to that, I think that's a very good point. The state funded significantly our historic preservation plan, and so they're keenly aware of the importance of this building to the city's planning efforts. And so, yes, I agree. It would be not only direct grants, but also historic tax credits that would be available for something like this.
Let's see, no other counselors want to speak on point on this. As I promised, we generally, this is not a public hearing, but we've never done, not once denied the public to address us. Are there any, let's just say show of hands, are there any members of the public that want to address us on this topic? I do see a couple hands. So, okay, so what we're going to do, in a second, we'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules. What we're going to do is there's going to be a 1 to 2 minute time limit. So, gather your thoughts together. We don't address anybody here, but except the chair. So you can look wherever you want, of course, but you just address the chair. You don't ask questions of anybody. Just make a comment. We're not going to have a back and forth. So with that being said, I think I saw Ms. Grass' hand up first. So
Suspend the rules.
On the motion to suspend rules, allow public to address per those restrictions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Ms. Grass, just your name and address, please, and
Yes, hi, my name is Tina Grass. I live at 33 George Street in Holyoke. First of all, I'm quite shocked and surprised to sit here tonight and hear that this memorandum of understanding has been presented at 5 o'clock today, combining these two issues. I sat here last week on Monday night and was told that they were, in fact, two separate issues. I see this as an attempt to force the hands of the counselors to vote yes to acquire the property at Precious Blood by the Housing Authority for the city by combining the two. There's no reason for these two to be voted on together. Second of all, someone made a remark that if the church was demolished, there would be no windows. That's not true. The windows would be removed. The windows would never be demolished in the church. I'd also like to say that I wish, as a member of Holy Cross, Our Lady of the Cross, rather, I wish I could support the diocese desire to sell this property to the city of Holyoke, but I cannot. I was here last Monday night. I watched the city council meeting on Tuesday night. It's not been made clear to me what the responsibility financially and liability-wise will be to the city. It's just too unclear. Tuesday night, we heard Chief Neiswanger tell us that as we go on through the year, Captain Febo, when he becomes chief, will be back requesting money for the police department. We know that the fire department will be back requesting money for their contract. I heard anyway, on Tuesday night, the DPW state that they don't have the manpower or the funds to do the work that needs to be done in the city. And another issue that I never hear anything about that costs the city money, and I don't think a lot of us hear about, are the lawsuits that we have pending. We don't hear about the cost of the outside counsel. We don't hear about the settlements. I don't know if how many of you even know there's a trial commencing July 9th in Worcester regarding geriatric authority issues. No less than 11 of us have been subpoenaed on 3 different days to be there for that week. That's another unknown as to what that could potentially cost the city. So thank you. Respectfully, I have to say, please think about these other issues. And we sat here and heard about a $6 million shortfall potentially in the school department budget. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moselle?
Good evening. Olivia Mazel, 25 Briarwood Drive, raising my hand. You all know where I am in this. You know where I've been for 7 years. I've supported the sale of MD. And the fact that you've bundled it together seems like a very good thing. It's not about a church, it's about economic development. This is a development that'll be right down the street that will bring thousands of people, thousands of dollars, plus people here to see a cultural center, a Polish cultural center, a Hispanic cultural center. This is not just, it's not a church anymore. It's already been deconsecrated, or I don't know if that's the right word. Altars have been taken out, pews have been taken out. We know that it's not specifically a church anymore. So in our dealings, when I dealt with Father Albert and the Bishop Rosinski, it was, I was very glad to see them step forward and agree to this bundle. It's going to be good for the city, good for the city. All the details and the finer details, I think, can be worked out. We do have a very viable tenant operator, and you know who they are. They'll be here, and they don't come. They built a church up for 50 cents from their salaries over the years. You know that. You've heard their stories. You've heard their stories before. So I just want to say this is a very responsible group, and they have no intention of coming back to the city. Their initial goal is to, and with your help, to approve the purchase and sale of Mata della Rosa and Perpetual Help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moselle. Anyone else from the public want to address us on this point? Please, Sandy. 1 second. Yeah, go ahead. Just name and address, Sandy.
I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to talk or not.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Only because I don't live in the city of Holyoke.
That's all right.
But I have...
Just name and address, Sandy.
Okay, Sandra Zeminski, 50 Lyman Terrace, South Hadley, Mass.
Yeah.
I'm well acquainted with Holyoke as I worked in the city for almost 30 years. I have a lot of friends here, and the reason I'm speaking, I like to tailgate what Olivia had said, why we are the Polish community, so passionate about saving the church. I took it upon myself. We have a book here. It's the history of Mata della Rosa Church, and I took excerpts out of it, had it copied, and I have 5 copies. And this would explain the history of the very beginning and what people sacrificed. It doesn't include, as Olivia said, the 50 cents a week that they contributed to the church, or not having butter on their bread, or not taking the bus to work to give to the creation and the building of the church. So I do have 5 copies. If any of you of the committee would like to receive a copy, you're welcomed. And I thank you for this time.
Thank you, Sandy. Sir, just name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Peter Staz. I'm at 62 Richard Eager Drive in Holyoke.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, Peter Staz, 62 Richard Eager Drive in Holyoke. I just want to assure the council that I'm involved with the Preservation Society of Mata della Rosa, Inc. We are incorporated, and we are very serious about purchasing the church and running it. And I want to compliment the city and its staff and the mayor for an excellent job they've done pursuing this.
Thank you, Mr. Stas. Vic? So name and address, please.
Yes, Attorney Vic Anup from 103 Bridle Path Road in Chicopee, Chairman of Friends of Mata della Rosa. This has been going on for a long time, the issue of the church, and it's changed. Now before the council is basically the heritage and the historical foundation of the church and saving the church. I have no doubt that if the council approves the transfer to the city of Holyoke, that at some quick point, unlike other buildings in Holyoke, people will come forward to help save the church once they know that everything's in place to go forward. So I'd look to the council in their wisdom. There were a lot of good questions asked today, but nothing that couldn't be solved if the intent of the council is to save an historical building. Thank you.
Thank you. Priscilla? Name and address, please.
Priscilla Chusky. I represent work in Holyoke. I live at 33 Hampton Knolls Road in Holyoke. I'm a partner with the law firm of Lyon and Fitzpatrick, and we have the contract to represent the Holyoke Housing Authority. I just wanted to address the question as to why these two are bundled together. It was not the Housing Authority's original request to have them bundled together. 2 years ago, if not 3 years ago, the Housing Authority approached the diocese about buying the property that is at issue today, where Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church was, and we were unable to reach an agreement with them. The price that the diocese was looking for was beyond the budget of the Housing Authority at that time. The $140,000 purchase price today is within the authority's budget to do that, and it was not at the request of the Housing Authority that it be bundled with the Mater Della Rosa Church. It was the diocese condition that's placed in the purchase and sale agreement that the Housing Authority has with the diocese. The diocese made that a condition of that agreement, that if the purchase of the church, the MD Church, did not go through with the city, then the purchase to the Housing Authority, or the sale to the Housing Authority is off the table. So I just wanted to clarify that for the parties.
Thank you. Is there anybody else under suspension of the rules? Well, speak now, or, well, hold on, Chris. Go ahead, please, miss, just your name and address. You can tilt that microphone so you can, that's it.
My name is Ivana Baruch. I live at 251 Walnut Street in Holyoke, and I want to thank the mayor and the law department. I think this is the greatest thing you're doing for MD, and buying it for $50,000. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baruch. Okay. Okay, I don't see anybody else, so, okay, thank you, public. Chris?
Hi, if I may, I'd like to readdress an earlier question that I feel like I didn't answer adequately. I think looking at the MOU as an option agreement helps to understand why it's important that it be before the city council for a vote. I think any option agreement in exchange for consideration would require appropriation for that consideration. And I think that's what we have before us today is an agreement. It's not a traditional option agreement because we're negotiating not with the party who currently owns the property, but with a quasi-municipal entity that's related to the city, with the housing authority. But regardless, it's an option agreement in essence, and it is for consideration. And that's why it's before the council as it is. And as I'd like to thank Attorney Chesky for her comments because because that clarifies the fact that these are being brought together, and the reason that they're interconnected is because the negotiation came together. But since it's two separate entities making purchases of property, they're not one and the same. I hope that it helps clarify the interconnectivity issue.
Thanks, Chris. Okay. All right, I think we are, Councilor McGivern.
Hey, just point out, Mr. Chairman, if you read item 5 and if you read item 6 separate, it says the exact opposite of what this MOU says in the issue of bonding. I'm sorry, in the issue of bundling this together. Item 5 talks only about the housing authority agreement. And item 6 doesn't even talk about the purchase, but the possible eminent domain taking of the property on Maple Street. They're two separate orders, and that's what's been before us. And to throw an MOU at us at last minute and tell us it's a bundled practice for the first time, that's beyond anything I've ever seen or heard here.
Thank you, Council. So let me just at the June 5th meeting of the City Council, I just want to, because it's been said a couple of times, I didn't have any of these records, any of these documents in front of me. I did indicate at that time that there looked like there was going to be a contingency sale because Marcos and I had conferred upon that. So I did say that at the June 5th meeting of the City Council. I reiterated it at the June 19th meeting. But again, we didn't have an MOU, so the proof's in the pudding. So just for, and I'm a pretty good skimmer, so just for the public, section 1 of this is this MOU, which is signed by the mayor and signed by the chair lady of Holyoke Housing Authority. I don't know if it's dated. I'm not 100% sure if I see a date on here, but I don't see a date on here. But it's never, regardless, it looks like it's signed by, and there's one missing signature, and that's the City Council of Holyoke. So the Holyoke Housing Authority shall not develop the parcels for 5 years. So that would be from July 18 to June 2023. The city shall have the right at any time during the option period to purchase the parcels from HHA. The price shall be $140,000 cash, or as Marcos pointed out, could be a combination of cash and real property, or just real property. Section 3 says, at the end of the option period, the city has not exercised its right. The HHA shall own the parcels unencumbered. And Marcos pointed out the parcels in question. Section 4, and there aren't too many more to go. Section 4, the transaction is contingent upon the sale of MD to the City of Holyoke. If the sale does not occur, then this MOU is null and void, and HHA is under no obligation to purchase the parcels from the bishop. Section 5, HHA is not responsible and not liable for any and all environmental costs associated with the parcels. The City of Holyoke agrees to the extent allowable by law to indemnify and hold HHA harmless for any and all claims, actions, and causes of action that may arise due to any environmental issues. So I guess there hasn't been any soil testing is what it sounds like with these premises at the time of HHA's acquisition of the premises. So we do prove this, and the City of Holyoke would indemnify HHA if there are environmental concerns on the property. Section 6, the agreement is binding upon all future mayors of City Holyoke and all future city councils up to July 2, 2023. Section 7, the purchase and sale agreement between the City of Holyoke and the Roman Catholic Bishop of the premises known as MD shall be attached as an exhibit here too. The purchase and sale between HHA and the Roman Catholic Bishop for the premises contemplating this MMU shall be attached. Okay, so we don't have a purchase and sale contract at all. So that purchase and sale contract between HHA and the Roman Catholic Archbishop, I presume that's pending on a vote of this body, which I said a few times earlier. We just recommend it would have to go to the full board at a future board date. That date at this point is unclear. This Section 8, the last section, this memorandum is not affected and shall be null and void unless and until approved by a vote of the City Council and the City of Holyoke and a vote of the Board of the Holyoke Housing Authority. Oh, okay, so, Marcos, we have a vote of Holyoke Housing Authority to approve this?
No. It's signed by the chairwoman of the Housing Authority, and similar to language.
Well, wait a minute. The chair of the Housing Authority, under what authorization did the chair of the Housing Authority have to sign this document? Counselor, can you come up to the mic and advise us on that, please?
Yeah, and I would just reiterate,
Mayor,
there's language in the contract that says it's pending board approval.
Yeah, time out for sports. It's just, if you would, has there been a vote taken by the Holyoke Housing Authority?
Housing Authority Board voted at its May board meeting to authorize the executive director and myself to negotiate with the City of Holyoke on this MOU and to negotiate with the diocese for the purchase of the property. The chair today signed the MOU with the city.
Has she been authorized by a board vote, Counselor?
She's authorized by the board to sign various documents on behalf of the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority Board has not seen this MOU, and that's why that language is in there, that it is still subject to the Housing Authority Board meeting, which is this Thursday evening.
No, that's why I'm kind of glad I read the language, read it,
But the chair has approved the MOU, council has approved the MOU, the executive director has, but the rest of the board has not seen it yet.
Yes, I heard that part. So the board previously authorized the chair lady and the executive director to negotiate.
Yep.
But the fruits of those negotiations, per what you just said, have not been returned to the full board of the Holyoke Housing Authority. They will not be returned until this Thursday.
Correct.
So I'm not going to ask you for a legal opinion on this right now. I'm not going to give a legal opinion on it. I just have my own opinion. I'm not authorized to give a legal opinion. But I appreciate that, Priscilla. That's very helpful. Mayor, I'm sorry, I cut you off, but I just want to hear from her first. Go ahead, Mayor, please.
Oh, no, I was just going to reiterate exactly what Attorney Chesky said.
Okay.
That the language is explicit, that it's pending board approval, but there was a previous board meeting in the Housing Authority in which members of the administration, including Marcos, attended and got prior authorization from the board to enter negotiations on the MOU.
I appreciate that. Council Solomon.
Yeah, I'm just, as Councilor McGivern stated, and I really respect him and his tenure on this board. I'm really having a tough time with this, combining this together, these two issues, and it's going to be difficult for me to, the bundling of this, and I understand why it's happening, but like I said, I would feel a lot more comfortable if it was separate. In Section 4, and I know Councilor Chairman read this, on the last reading of it, it says this transaction is further subject to the approval of the City of Holyoke City Council prior to the inception date of the Memorandum of Understanding. And what is the inception date of this? If you could, Councilor.
My answer would be that the inception date of the Memorandum of Understanding is the date upon which it's approved and signed by all parties, including the City Council.
So that could be in September. I mean, before we get to this signed by, it's still got to go through the Housing Authority, right?
That's correct. It does have to go through the Housing Authority, but it has to be approved by the Housing Authority and by the City Council before its inception. And I'll just note that the purchase and sale agreement upon which there is a contingency that's not going to extend till September. Does that clarify?
Yeah, somewhat. I think last week we talked about I think Councilor Bartley stated something about a 30-day notice that this has to be approved by.
Correct. The purchase and sale agreement has a 30-day window.
So that would go into, is it July?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm just saying at the end of the year, we're not having another full council meeting until August. And also, unless there's a special meeting, also we're not having, I'm on the Finance Committee. This approval has to get $50,000 to purchase this, right?
That's before the body right now, not in this committee, but that order has already been filed.
Right. But if we're not meeting in the Finance Committee, there's no way that we can approve of.
Well, it could be taken up at a special meeting, couldn't it?
I mean, I just don't know if there's any meeting scheduled for Finance because it being the end of the year. That just, some of the questions I have, this is.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. I'm just saying that in a special meeting, it could hypothetically be taken up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, this is really going to get, I don't want your heads to explode, but we have a contract in front of us. What Councilor Tallman just referred to is the financing piece that would support the contract. That financing piece is in committee, in the Finance Committee. What Marcos, Mr. Merrill just advised, which is a true statement, that though I alluded to it earlier, we could possibly have a special meeting on Thursday. A special meeting can only be called by the mayor of the city and or the city council rules by the president of the city council. The agenda would be set by the mayor and or the president of the city council. As Councilor Tallman rightly pointed out, the Finance Committee has in its jacket the financing piece for this. The mayor cannot call something that sits in committee to be on a city council agenda. The city council president cannot call something that sits in committee to be on a city council agenda. But as Marcos rightly pointed out, it is a true statement that a 2/3 vote of this body in full city council, so that's 9 votes, can remove during a full session anything from the jacket, as I just mentioned. So they can remove it from that. So though it sits in committee, they can remove it and bring it before the full city council. Again, I don't want your heads to explode, but I just wanted to provide the background to that. Marcos, did you want to?
So 2 issues I want to clarify. One is timing of the substance in this document that you received today, and the second one is the bundling, which keeps coming up. The committee was provided the draft version that we had of this a week ago. So we weren't trying to throw something new at you at the last minute, but we did want to give you, as we stated last time, a final version so that you knew that it was the final version, and we got over the barrier that we had last time, which was, how do we know that we're voting on something that is indeed the final version? So we want to make sure that we're giving you a final version that was signed. In the draft that you had, that bundling language was not there. Okay, so let me get into the bundling language. If that were removed from the agreement, it would either have no effect on the actual outcome or it would have a bad effect on the city. Why? Because the fact that the diocese is making it a condition through the purchase and sale with the housing authority is what makes it relevant, not its presence in the MOU that you're voting on it, right? So imagine approving an MOU that says that in 5 years, if we're not buying the property from you, we're just giving away 2 parcels of land. Well, this language actually protects the city because it's saying if the housing authority never buys the land to begin with, we're not bound by the agreement in the MOU. I see that as a good thing. Alternatively, if a lawyer looks at this and says it just invalidates the contract, then we end up in the same place. The MOU is invalidated. One way or the other, the language here in front of you that's new from last Monday is really kind of irrelevant. What's relevant is that the diocese has made this a bundling, it has bundled it together. I understand your reservations that you would rather it not be bundled, but ultimately it's their property and they could also decide to not sell it. And then to refer back to my earlier question, we would still have to pursue, if we wanted to build a school there, through other means. But as you all know, and I've been before you with other questions, in other scenarios and facing your question on that, it's much easier to face a property owner that is willing to sell their land than one that is unwilling to sell it. And so this is a mechanism for us to get it willingly at a reasonable price. But please, I would just say, don't get focused on the language here, because even if we take it out right now, it would be irrelevant. Every scenario that we play out has the same effect.
Thank you. Councilman Gibbons.
Just to make it clear about the Finance Committee, as chair of the Finance Committee, the Finance Committee is waiting for the determinations of this committee and the full City Council to make a decision. Then the Finance Committee has to argue the choice which is given to the City Council of $50,000 from free cash or $50,000 from stabilization. It would have made no sense for the Finance Committee to have a meeting prior to these determinations and this study to be completed. I'm still waiting for answers to questions that I asked last week. I'm now getting over the MOU being bundled, and I'm hearing the deed has to be executed by July. Is this the other document that was handed to me this evening?
The purchase and sale agreement, yeah, this is the same purchase and sale agreement from last week's meeting, and it was effective as of the date on it, which is I believe was June 18th, and it extends for 30 days. So yes, if the closing doesn't happen by 30 days after that date, then this purchase and sale agreement is
So you're making us aware of that this evening?
No, that was definitely discussed last meeting.
Last week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me just my point out for the counselor.
I'm I try to listen to everything, but
Counselor.
I know the chair of the Finance Committee has not been called about anything about getting ready for this Thursday.
Well,
I heard about the special meeting this evening through this committee. Communication here is gone. Transparency doesn't exist if you don't talk to people who sit on this council and who have to make these decisions, and you can't even get answers to our questions. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's okay. I just want to point out, and I'll recognize the mayor in a second, that when we were here last Monday, the 18th, I gave my opinion, but it was confirmed by Chris in an email to me. I'm not sure how well that got distributed, but the contract was signed June 18th, and I said on the microphone last Monday that there's very clear in that contract that there's 30 days. So we'd heard some other reports saying June 30th. Well, those were premature at best and inaccurate at worst. And the actual contract, it says 30 days from the date of signature, which would make it July 18th. And I did say that on the microphone last week. But as the counselor rightly points out, it was I mean, we didn't have the MOU, and we had some other things going on. But before I recognize the mayor, I have to recognize Councilor Rahman.
Yes, no, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, to the council. So in essence, if on this Thursday, like for example, I mean, we all work, we all have lives. I won't be around on Thursday. I have other plans. It's budget time for us. It's budget time for my full-time nonprofit. And I have to get that passed as well. So if we don't get the 9 to pull that out of finance and then to make that determination, it seems like a really rushed process, because then, I mean, we might have to extend the date back as far as that special meeting to give us more time, because I'd like to attend the finance committee meeting to hear their discussions and deliberations. But I just, for one, feel like the whole timing's a little bit rushed. As a body, you know, I did read in the press release that we had 30 days to sign it. I was like, well, that doesn't give us any time at all as a body to really discuss the financing component, which I think is critical. I would just like to know, like, so what happens if Thursday's meeting doesn't happen, or we don't have 9 members? Because, right, we don't know if all 13 of us can make it on Thursday night. And like I said, I'm hearing it tonight for the first time coming to this meeting, that we might have a special meeting on Thursday night. That's not ample amount of time for anyone to plan, I feel like. I feel like if notice was given a week ago or 2 weeks ago to say, hey, we're going to have to do a special meeting just around this, what happens if by this Thursday, or, you know, we don't get it? Is that going to set you back with the deliberations with the diocese as far as your contract negotiations, or what's going to happen with you?
What happens at the end of the fiscal year is we lose the ability to use free cash. So one of the 2 financing options is off the table.
Okay, so then again, through you, Mr. Chairman, so basically we're being forced, even though we have 30 days till July 18th, to say that you have till June 30th to decide not only to approve this, but then you have to go through the 2 financing options that we haven't discussed yet. So it's really not July 18th. You're putting the pressure on us to say that we have to spend this before, we have to decide how we're going to finance this.
I would just disagree with the characterization. We're not forcing the council to do anything. We have a series of things that we can do to leverage a better negotiation, right? And a series of conditions that we have before you. I don't think that I'm putting a comfortable situation before you. It hasn't been easy for us to negotiate this either. And it's unfortunate that the options are limited, and just like on that side of the table, this is the worst time of the year for us as well. But unfortunately, those are the cards that were dealt. It's either free cash or stabilization now, or between July and the time that free cash is recertified sometime in September or something like that, then that is not an option. It's just factual.
So exactly, through you, Mr. Chairman, so exactly, and then this is with all due respect to you, Marcos, and you, Mr. Mayor, and you, Council. So exactly that. So if that option of free cash is off the table, you're only going to debate stabilization, because that's the only option that we've been given. And I'm a hell no on stabilization guy. Everyone knows this in this body. I'm with my colleague, Councilor Bacon, on this. So in essence, you lose my vote. I don't think it's fair to us, Mr. Chairman, and I'm just, you know, on my high horse, and I just think that the timing of this is, you know, and I respect you, I thank you for all your negotiations, but this is also why I believe on any MOUs or host community agreements, the council should ratify them before they're executed. These are one of the exact same reasons why these things happen. We're not in the loop till last minute, and then it forces our hand, because in essence, and that's not by your doing, but if we have to wait for free cash to be certified, the only option I'm left with, and that's not for you guys, that's for budget, state, timing, the clock, I only have till June 30th to determine, to say yes on free cash, and then if not, it goes away. And then if I do this in July, I only have stabilization, and it's going to be a no vote. And not because I don't want this project to happen, but because I don't believe we should be tapping into our stabilization fund for the reasons my colleagues stated. Like, if we're not going to own every nook and cranny and crevice and piano, and I mean, the 2 bird towers that I saw can go in an instant. I don't know why we can't have the bird towers, but whatever, you negotiated what you had to. I just think that it's not a good choice.
Mayor?
Yeah, I would just say I'm not sure why. I just feel like it's getting now framed as a council versus administration topic, when I think this is further from the truth. I think it's important that we're all on the same team, right? And we want to potentially preserve this church, this building in the city of Holyoke. And so the accusation that the administration is intentionally backing the council into a corner is just absolutely untrue. I mean, these are negotiations that, yes, ideally, we would have loved to finish them in January or last fall or whatnot, but it took a lot of time, and we were able to achieve something that no other group or entity in the city or outside the city was able to do. And so, yes, if the end of the fiscal year expires and we lose the free cash option, and no, that doesn't mean that stabilization is potentially the only option. Between July 1st and the certification of free cash, there, again, could be a special meeting called by either the council president or myself. It could be a transfer, a line item transfer from another line item within the budget that has the revenue in that line item to purchase the church. And so again, I just think we need to step back. There was no intentional, putting the council in a corner. And I just want to, rebut the accusations as well that lack of transparency. I mean, we sat here a week ago and it was made clear, number one, and Marcos asserted it, we had draft language of the MOU. And so up to the point that we were working on the MOU, we gave you that language to make sure that we didn't have the conversation about the administration not being transparent. There was conversations between the Director of Planning and Development, Marcos, and the committee chair about scheduling these potential meetings. I mean, I was here, I was listening, I was paying attention. We talked about the prospect of there being a special meeting on the 28th. We actually articulated that there was going to be a potential special meeting on the 28th for this topic specifically. And so I can't answer for why or why not, members of this committee were not here last week to hear that, but we were very transparent about the MOU. We added language. We didn't we didn't alter the purchase and sale. That was also provided to the council last week. And again, there's been a lot of communication between members of the administration and members on this committee about this topic in particular. And so there's been no effort whatsoever in backing the council or this committee or any member into a corner. And if folks feel like that, we apologize.
Okay, just one second. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I want the committee to know that I can't speak for the administration, but I personally am more than happy to go back to the table with the diocese after the expiration of this purchase and sale agreement. The problem that I think we will see become more pressing is the fact that the diocese has refrained from demolishing the structure in order to, in a good faith effort to make these negotiations happen. And their urgency, their sense of urgency has been expressed to us in no uncertain terms. And and another point that I'd like to make is that you had this purchase and sale agreement signed and in front of you. Believe me, the second the terms were negotiated, as soon as possible after the terms were negotiated, the agreement was before you. We were hammering these terms out as diligently as possible for an extended period of time. So I just want to be clear from a procedural standpoint that there was no bad faith effort to put this in front of the council at the 11th hour, none at all. And that, as I said, I'm totally happy to go back to the negotiation table as soon as if this purchase and sale agreement does not get approved, and we can start over again. However, I can't guarantee anything about what the diocese is going to do or say on those.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that for me, although I couldn't be here because I was stuck in storms in Indiana, and that's why I texted the chairman, my airplane got canceled, so that's why I wasn't here. Item number 4 in the MOU wasn't included. I didn't see that last week. When I talked to my colleagues and I got a copy of the MOU that was forwarded by the chairman to me, because I do my homework, I watch the videotapes after, I check in, we get the stuff. That wasn't there, I didn't see that, and all of a sudden they're tied in together. I, like my colleagues, was excited about 2 separate sales, the HHA deal and the Mater Dolores sale, but separate entities. That wasn't included last week. Am I wrong? Yes.
The language of Section 4 is identical to the draft that we had last week.
So it's exactly the same?
The language of Section 4 is identical, yes.
Okay.
What was sent last week is what we had at that point last week.
But it wasn't signed, it wasn't finished.
No, and we said that outright. So the committee had exactly what we had at that point last week.
And then between then and now it was finalized and agreed upon?
Yes, and that's what we said on Monday that we would provide by this meeting. But again, I just want to say that the bundling of it is not a condition that, even if we take that out today, if we had just like
it adds a level of pressure, like to ensure, because I want the school deal to happen and the land transfer to happen. In order for that to happen, we have to ensure that we purchase the building. So I agree with you on that, and it's difficult. And all I'm saying is the timing wise, and I'm not accusing them. It's just the timing of the timeline of the budget cycle. I cannot literally before June 30th or after that. And great, I love to hear that the administration is willing to do a line item transfer. I can't wait to receive that. Hopefully, if we can't get this done by Thursday, to see what line item we're going to get this from. And again, we'll probably, figure that out. If that money does exist, that's great. And I'm just making it clear for the record that if it comes down to that after June 30th time and we can't get to 9 or whatever to approve it, I, in good conscience, and I'm making that public and aware to everyone, Thursday I cannot make it. and I cannot vote for stabilization. So I look forward to getting that line item version if we do get it. But this was all, being finalized or approved. I didn't know if stuff was gonna change, and I want to ensure, for me, that bundling is difficult for everyone, And so I can't wait to see what happens after this meeting, or to see what happens on Thursday, and to see if we can make it happen or not. But thank you.
Oh, okay, well, all right, we're gonna have to, no, I get that, but just so my friends and colleagues here, we're just gonna, I'm just looking at the time, so I'm gonna recognize Councilor Bacon first, and I'll recognize Councilor McGivern, okay?
So on a new topic, during an unusual occurrence in the city in the past, a special account was set up, which residents of the city could choose to donate to, and this was a tragic situation in that instance. In this instance, it's a situation that has become very divisive within the city. I'm sure we're all hearing from people on both sides of this issue. And so what I'm wondering, and I don't know about the legal aspects of it, I'm wondering if it's possible in the way that we set up that account, if we could set up an account for this purpose, that people that wish to purchase that, with the city being the vehicle, could put their money where their passions are and fund the purchase. Is that a legal option? I guess I'm putting it through the chair to whoever might know the answer to that. We did it in a certain unique circumstance. I'm not sure it's even a possible option in this circumstance, but I thought I would put it out there as a question.
Yeah, I don't really want to express an opinion, but I'm just trying to think of the history of that, if I remember.
It was out of the mayor's office.
It was out of the mayor's office, so I think that was set up outside of
I don't know how it was set up.
Well, it wasn't set up through the city council.
Chamber of Commerce.
There was nothing official to the city council. I think we had questions on it at that time, but let me recognize Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, and I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman. Who negotiated a contract for the diocese?
That's just for anybody, right? Anybody?
Do you mean the purchase and sale?
Who sat down at the table?
I sat at the table. Marco sat at the table. Chris, Paul, Rory, and then members of the diocese's team.
Who was the team for the diocese is my question.
That was Rob Quinn, Jack Egan. The bishop was at the initial, the kickoff of the negotiations, and then delegated to Jack Egan and Rob Quinn. Father Albert was there, and one other gentleman. I can't remember his name. Mark Dupont.
Oh, Mark's he's a communication
Mark wasn't
director.
at all of the negotiations.
Mark's the communication director.
They had two different lawyers. They had Jack Egan, Rob Quinn, and they had another gentleman. I just can't remember the name.
But when you get back to the table, give Jack my best, all right? Mayor, you're getting very sensitive in your old age. I said transparency. I did not say you backed us into a corner. The diocese backed us into a corner. The transparency that we didn't get was you told us about the press conference the night before the press conference that this was all being announced, and I read about it in the paper a couple of days later. Sorry. I accept your apology, and I apologize if I'm a little grouchy, but we've been going like night and day for 3 weeks, as we do every June.
Yeah, exactly.
The diocese is asking something unfair to the city council that we cannot do our due justice of asking our questions and getting our answers. And I'll stop there because Jack will be very mad if I say what I really want to say. But this is an ongoing situation, not just with the city of Holyoke, but this is an ongoing situation of how the owner of the property operates. We don't need that, and we could go through this the whole evening. What we need is something fair that's in front of us that makes sense short-term and long-term. It's not here yet. If this committee wants to vote this out this evening, I will make sure the finance committee, as long as I know by tomorrow morning, will be prepared for Thursday night. I don't know how many city councilors you can get for Thursday night because outside of the 7 of us here, no one else knows about Thursday night. You can rebut that too if you want, but we're going to go back and forth all night. We need answers.
Okay, Mayor.
And we need a separation.
Just quickly, I'm sensitive, so I want to respond quickly to Councilor McGivern. I'm not old, Joe. Come on. See, I don't even remember what I was going to say. I just wanted to say, in terms of the announcement at the press conference, Counselor, I think it's important. It was an announcement from my office, and we were very clear that day that it was still pending City Council approval. I made that clear in the press conference in my language. I know there were some media headlines that say, Holyoke purchased Mater Della Rosa Church. We certainly can't write those headlines. I also know in a world of everyone being hyper-connected over the internet or whatnot, if this information was readily available to every single other elected official in the city, there was no way that it would have been contained when negotiations weren't yet final. And so we were negotiating up until that point. And both parties agreed I would inform members of the city council, and then the bishop and his team would inform members of the parish council the night before the announcement. But again, we were very clear and transparent about the fact that the administration did this in good faith, but again, it's pending city council approval, and that's why we're going through the process.
Okay. Councilor Tallman.
Yes, real briefly, and I respect the work you've done, Mayor and Marcos, and I do understand, they're not backing us into a corner, and we are one team. We are one team, and but we can agree and we can disagree, on issues, and this is something that's been going on for a long time, and I'm a member of Our Lady of the Cross Parish, and we've been dealing with this for a long time too, and it's difficult. But the way I see this is, it's a lot to really digest in a short period of time. And also, if there is some kind of special meeting, I sat here last week, 2 nights, so actually 4 nights in council meetings, and 2 nights in budget hearings that we barely got 5 or 6 people here out of 13. Now, if you feel that there's going to be a meeting Thursday night, if there's possibly one, that you're going to get 13 councilors here, even 10, even 11, I think it's unlikely, because people have plans, people are going on vacation, people have family, and it's just going to be a difficult thing to do. So, I'm looking for discussion, I'm here, but I think you guys got to understand that we represent the whole city. Not just certain people, not just certain wards, not just a certain area of the city. And I respect the history. I went to that church several times before it closed down, and I really love the church. But I respect the work you've done, but we have an obligation too, as city councilors and as representatives of the people, of the taxpayers, and it's not easy. It's a difficult thing. But we get the information we get the phone calls, we make a decision what we feel is best in the interest of the city. And I'm looking forward to that. If there is a meeting, I will be here. I can't say anything for my colleagues because people have plans. It's the end of summer, it's the end of the fiscal year. People have vacation, school's out. So, but as I was here for all the budget hearings and for the council meeting and any special meetings, I will be here and attend and take any information that I get and make a decision which I feel is right for the taxpayers of the city of Holyoke.
Yeah, just on that point, I did contact the president of City Council today. We do have an ordinance committee meeting on July 17th at 6:30, so I suppose it's feasible we could have a special meeting of the City Council that day. So I was maybe, if you would, consider maybe taking a poll of city councilors whether or not June 28th is acceptable, or possibly July 17th, and see if we can get a full run. But I think we've kind of gone over this and over this and over this. At this point, I think we're getting into really the weeds of city council business. So I think we might have to take a vote. I'm just going to explain my vote on this. Mayor, do you want one last word? I'm sorry.
Very quickly, I would just ask, is likely we'll have a special meeting on the 28th, and if there's not quorum or there's not enough votes to pass it, it could be tabled to the next meeting. And I will say that MD will not be the only agenda item on the agenda. I know there was a couple things tonight when I was watching the meeting, the yoga studio, the salon, that'll potentially be on there for approval. These are businesses in the city that don't want to have to wait till August 7th to start operating. And also a transfer from IT that needs to happen before the end of the fiscal year. So I'll send a communication out tomorrow, and depending on the action that the body takes on this item, it will or will not be on the agenda. But I do think the administration wants clarity either way as to how to proceed, and I think the diocese would appreciate that as well.
Okay. All right. Why don't we get a motion, then we can...
Make a motion at table.
I'll second.
Oh, Okay, I wasn't expecting that motion, but that is not the, before we do, can we step back on that? Would you mind, gentlemen, just reconsider?
Yeah, reconsider.
If we do table, do you have a sense as to when you want to take, because we don't have another meeting scheduled, and we have the July 18th, and so I would like your take on when we would potentially, unless you just want to leave it in committee, and then we could take it out. Take it out.
We meet on the
I mean,
17th.
the option would be to remove it from committee to full city council without a recommendation. So there's that as well. Would people feel comfortable about that if they, well, I have no idea. So,
I'd be amendable to that, to leave it in committee.
To leave it in
Without-
committee?
Yeah.
Well, you could forward it to city council without a recommendation.
Without a recommendation.
I mean, because that way it moves it out, and so you certainly have that option as well. But instead of having it trapped here, because if you do, then Thursday, you need 9 votes to take it out, and, I don't really think that's fair to the people who negotiated this. But that would be me. So I would not vote the table in committee myself. But if you want to make that motion, you can. I would suggest you make a motion, if you're of that mind, then to make a motion to forward it to city council without a recommendation of the committee. That would be my.
I'll make that instead of leaving it here and not having a set date with the work that's been done. So I'll make a motion to leave it
To forward
to city council without a recommendation.
Second.
Okay, I do have a second for that. Does anybody want to make, because it's been a long night, I think we could go around and around this, and we'll wait till, is that okay? All right, we'll do a voice vote. On the motion to forward it to city council without a recommendation, all in favor? Aye. Okay, okay, that is, okay, before everybody starts running off, we just have one last thing. If I could just get a motion, please. It's just for informational purposes, just so we get through it real fast.
Motion for.
Five and six, yeah, if I could just get a motion to take up the last item off the table, please.
Motion to take item 7, well, it says 9, but it's really 7.
Okay.
Off the table.
And a second, please?
Second.
Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, our next date is August 7th. I just need to make that clear because we will have at least one public hearing that night on that one, okay?
What time would that meeting be? That's a full council meeting that night, right?
So we would have it at 5:30.
5:30.
5:30, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody. I just want one last motion, I'll do it.
Motion
adjourned.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, we're adjourned.
I'm not sure I can make it this Thursday because I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work.
Okay, well, you don't have to be here.
Okay. So the July 17th would be better.